Hey George, all right. Apologies everyone if you hear this squeaking noise every so often. Um, Sitting in this chair is pretty much the only place I can get comfortable at the moment. Hi Jennifer, you all right? So yeah, every so often you'll have to put up with this squeak, I'm afraid, because I have to like sit in a certain position. Otherwise, my foot throbs. Hi Ronnie, welcome. Not good. I've kind of just accepted that it's going to be not great moving around for the next however long week or so, maybe a little bit longer. It's just boring. Hi, Ronnie, all right?
Oh, Andy. What happened to you? You fell down the stairs, did you?
Yeah, yes. I was literally helping my neighbour carry a cabinet down the stairs, and I literally missed the second to last stair and slipped onto the last stair, but like on the side of my ankle, basically.
Oh, right. So what you done? Twisted your ankle, have you?
Well, I've basically rolled it, yeah.
Yeah. Oh dear. So that stopped you going up to the
It's yeah,
festival.
stopped me going to Newcastle. Well, stopped me doing everything. Look, I'm really lucky that in a sense I'd already arranged to go to Newcastle because my mum come and picked my son and my dog up yesterday. So I'm literally I've got no responsibilities whatsoever, which really helps.
Oh, that's handy. Well. At least I suppose it could have been a lot worse. I suppose.
Yeah,
So,
oh yeah, it could have been a ton
yeah.
worse. If I'd have broken it, I'd have been out for a
Oh, I
significant
know.
amount of
I
time. Yeah,
hope I hope you get completely better soon, mate. It's not
yeah.
good to kind of be, not be able to get about very
No,
well.
it's a nightmare to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I'm just lucky. Like I said, lucky I got my mum to help.
How are you going to be? How are you going to be doing with like school run and stuff like that? Are you still going to have to do that?
I'm probably not going to be able to drive for a week or so. So no,
Yeah,
look, like I said, luckily I've got my mum and my dad that can
yeah,
potentially help out. One, but my son gets the bus anyway most days.
yeah.
It was only
Oh,
3 days a week I have to pick my youngest up, so it's those commitments I need covered.
yes, yeah. Oh well, hopefully it'll be all sorted soon, mate. It's ever so frustrating. I find whenever I have anything that restricts mobility, it kind of does do my head in a bit. So I can completely empathise with you. Hang on, what's that? An alarm going off here. He won't get the smoke alarm this week anyway.
Oh, that's good to know.
I took it. I took it off the ceiling. I took it off the ceiling, and the thing was still bloody going. So
Oh, really?
I had to take the battery. I had to take the battery out of it in the end.
Flipping it.
We've got
What a
another one.
nightmare.
Yeah, we have got another one that doesn't do that. So we are kind of covered. But
Oh, hi Roger, by the way. What is that? Is that the film? It's really tiny in my little box. Hang on, let me see if I can adjust the
It's
box.
the film. Ooh, I just kicked the.
Oh, Dad, don't you do your foot?
I know. Yeah, I'm going to say the last thing you should be doing is a school run.
Yeah, no, I won't be doing any school runs this week. Guarantee. I can't see. Considering how swollen it still is, how sore it still is, and how uncomfortable it still is to more or less do anything at all. I can't see it going for a good few days, maybe even a week.
I don't know.
So, Andy,
Yeah,
let's start with congratulations on you getting your funding for a new set of equipment. Tell
Yeah.
us all about it.
So yeah, if anyone is listening who contributed, and even if you're not, a massive thank you to everybody. That's, I mean, it's a week tomorrow that we put that up, and it's already done, and more so than being done. For anyone that doesn't know, a friend of mine helped order the one thing, and my dad ordered the others. So everything is coming. The microphone actually already arrived at about 3:30 this afternoon, but the computer, the screen, my sound equipment, all of that stuff, everything is coming Monday and Tuesday. So I'm hoping by Tuesday evening, Wednesday morning, I'll have everything set up and be ready to kind of get back to work, which is great. It's just incredible considering, I honestly didn't think that it would be anything like this quick.
now it's brilliant, isn't it? It must have been really quick because I didn't see it until it was on hold. That's the first time I saw the official
Yeah, it
one on
was quick.
hold.
Now, Andy,
Yes,
I want
like I
you
said, they
to.
only set it up last Sunday on about
Yeah,
9 o'clock on the evening, so we haven't even had a full week yet.
Yeah,
that's
very
brilliant.
good. Now, Andy, I want you to promise me something, right?
Yeah,
Is
well,
if
depending on
if
what it is, obviously.
if you're having trouble setting it up, and you're getting frustrated, don't kick the computer, okay? So,
No, that absolutely won't happen.
No, that's excellent. That's really, really, really good news. That is.
But yeah, whilst I remember as well, if anyone has any suggestions for the enhancement videos, start sending them across, because I really would like to make a special effort as soon as I am set up to get as many as them out as possible, because obviously it's pretty much the only way that I can say thank you very quickly. And I would like to do that. And also I kind of want to test to see what the new machine can do too.
yeah, Ronnie, have you got an archive of old VHS tapes or anything like that?
No, I don't know. I don't know what happened to our VHS tapes. I think we took them to the charity shop. I've still got a telly. We've still got our telly that we've got in our bedroom that we kind of, yeah, sort of watch very, very occasionally. It still plays VHS tapes. It's still got the slot in it to play
Oh
VHS.
wow.
And we've got it connected up to a Freeview box, so you get the Freeview through it. But we haven't got any tapes. No, some years ago I took them to the charity shop. So,
See, I tried to find because
Well, I didn't mean like Hollywood blockbusters, Ronnie. I was talking about,
I
like
can't think what's the guy's
you
name
mean
you said that made that film
documentaries,
that
yeah.
had Ronnie in that you sent me the other day, because I tried to find that Open Door Hunt Sabs version that was featured and I couldn't find it anywhere, because that would have been a good one I thought to restore, but I couldn't find it.
it's not on? Yeah, because I don't think that one's on YouTube. Because the Vegan Society one is, but
Yeah, I've restored the Vegan Society one, and that's quite significantly better, and that's why I thought the Hunt Sabs one would be a good one, but I couldn't find it anywhere.
Okay, people, what is your favorite character on the Vegan Society film? Go on. Who's it going to be? Mr. and
well,
Mrs.
Mr. and Mrs. Bland.
Yes.
But I quite like that Professor bloke that say, I have examined these vegans and I found all of them to be quite normal. That one.
Yeah, how would he know? He wasn't normal himself, but
What I'd say, go back and examine them again,
I always say, right, is that obviously nobody was tuned into media in those days, because like you would have just said to the Blands, we want to change your name just for the film, right?
Yeah, change your name to change your name to Mr. and Mrs. Tasty.
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Virile or something.
Savoury, Mr. and Mrs. Savoury. Or something,
Yeah, spicy. Mr. and Mrs. Spicy.
Something that doesn't reinforce people's views of veganism, negative views of veganism or the vegan diet. I mean,
Mr. and Mrs. Tasteless.
It's the kind of, they could have been is there a worse name that they could have had than
Not
that?
really, no, to be perfectly honest. I mean, no.
Unless they were Mr. and Mrs. Lettuce or something.
Mr. and Mrs. Protein Deficient? I mean, not really.
Mr. and Mrs. B12.
Yeah. I mean, that was
not really, no. From a stereotypical point of view, no. Not especially for the time.
No, but they obviously, that would never have occurred to them, I don't think, to...
No, that's what I mean, though. It just wasn't tuned in for the media at all, were they?
No. But you see, I remember watching that. I remember watching that because I think I was in jail when it came out. What year was it to come out?
1976, Ronnie.
Was I in jail? Yeah, I think I probably was in jail, as I was during most years at that period of time. But I think I got out in fairly early '77. So I think I did watch it. I was able to watch a record. Somebody had a recording of it, so I did watch it at the time. When I watched it at the time, it seemed perfectly normal. A perfectly normal video. I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah, I know, and all the stilted language and everything. It wasn't weird then, was it?
It wasn't weird because that's how how kind of everyone.
That's how the English used to talk,
What actually kind of motivated them to make the film? Like, what was the kind of why was the talking point all of a sudden, or whatever? Because I mean, they didn't.
No, it was the system. It was the Open Door was the BBC kind of community services kind of thing. And what they basically said was, we'll look for social movements who don't normally get on TV, and we'll give them access to our facilities. So
I'm with you. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So whether they kind of invited the Vegan Society or the Vegan Society saw the sort of general advert about it or whatever, and thought, right, we'll take advantage of that. I kind of don't really know.
It'll have been probably a recommendation, wasn't it? The Sabs first, Ronnie.
It kind of might have been. I did see the
Yeah. So somebody's bound to have said,
Yeah.
"Well, why don't you do this with the Vegan Society?" Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been, but it led to a huge increase of interest in veganism and a big increase of membership of the Vegan Society. And I think the kind of those two things, like the kind of upsurge of what you might call animal rights activism in the 70s, I think a lot of it might have been a trip well, certainly in the UK, a lot of it might have been attributable to those two programs, the Hunt Sabs and the Vegan Society one, because there was a real big influx into the Hunt Sabs after their one, and then a load of new vegans sort of springing up after Vegan Society. So that would have been added really big numbers, I suppose what you might say, to the animal rights movement at the time.
Got to tell you this. I know it's not the right place or anything, but Reasonable Vegan has just said, well, in my opinion, veganism is a philosophy. Because I'm such a radical vegan, I'm going to regard it as a philosophy.
Oh, are you watching his reaction to my film?
No, this is best ways to be vegan. He also did another thing with somebody called Phil, I think it was, and got involved with that earlier on. But because he thinks he's very radical because he's opposed to animal companions and stuff, but he thinks he's very radical because he's just defining veganism as a philosophy. I said, well, just read the first 4 words of the bloody definition.
But
is that the definition that was coined by some dude in the 60s and then some other dude?
Yeah, Leslie Cross and some other dude, yeah.
How long has he been going, this Reasonable Vegan? Is he a new kid on the block, or is he been around?
I don't actually know the answer to that question. It only seems to have popped up on our radar.
Yeah, he's got less than 300 subscribers, doesn't he?
Apparently, tofu kills a lot of things. You've got to watch out with tofu. If you see any tofu coming along the street, then get out of the way, because it kills loads of things, apparently, according to some comment on here.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to save animals.
Oh, well, let's have a look at that. Where's the tofu coming?
You mean soy, right? And do you know who is consuming the most amounts of soy on the planet? It's not humans, for a start, just to give you that little hint. So maybe go and have a think about that first. And if you can answer that question, it might make you think about a few other things.
And it's not soy for tofu either.
No.
Anyway, yeah, we might have some other peculiar comments.
Oh yeah, I feel bad for vegans. You want to save animals, but tofu kills so many things.
Yeah, things. I mean, what objects are being killed by tofu?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah.
Language is fun.
We could have a film, couldn't we? You remember the Day of the Triffids? Could have the Day of the Tofu, couldn't we? The Day of the Tofu comes and kills him.
Yeah, the great film. That the old one, the black and white one, is really good.
We could have a horror B movie on it.
Yeah, it would be good, because obviously nobody would be able to run away. They'd get so far down the road and then they'd all just waste away. So yeah, it'd be interesting.
The Attack of the Tofu.
Yeah, but I mean, going back though to, we're on the subject of films again now, and like going back to the Vegan Society one. When you watch, that language being like really stilted to that. But when you watch old films, like black and white films and that, it's like that in those films, isn't it? It's like, oh, hello, darling, and it's all that kind of stuff. It's all like that. They all speak very, very posh, don't
well, that's how it used to be done in England in those days. Hey, darling, would you do you fancy a bit of rumpy pumpy? Well, I might do a little later, darling.
What there used to be certain characters in those films. There used to be like a kind of really snobby spoken man and a snobby spoken woman, and then there used to be a Cockney guy, hello, hello, cobble of a couple of manual plumbing.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
It was one of them guys.
Yeah, I only dig the drains, me, mate. I only dig the drains.
That kind of thing. And they were about the only characters in it, weren't they? Those people. And in the science fiction ones, there was a mad professor who always got killed because he did some foolish thing. And they were like kind of all the same. Do you know what I mean? I don't watch. Louise likes the black and white films and the Hitchcock things, and she watches them. So I happened to catch sight of them, and they're all like that. All the black and white films, well, ones I've seen anyway.
But I'd imagine a big part of that also, I suppose, is down to the fact that once upon a time when it cost ridiculous amounts of money to do that, it was only going to be people that were talented enough or could read properly or any of those things that were ever going to be on. Whereas now, I mean, anyone can get on TV potentially, whether that's like X Factor or being interviewed by a news reporter or any of that stuff. Whereas I suppose before it was only people that genuinely could act.
Yeah, I suppose it was. It was. I mean, I remember the telly when there was only BBC, when it was black and white, and we had this telly. It was like kind of Bakelite type telly, you know, a little brown telly, and the only channel was BBC. So, and
yeah. I remember when the colour TV came in, and it was a big question in the school. You know, have you got a colour TV? Have you got a colour TV? And I got so sick of it in the end, I said, yeah, it's brown.
Yeah. It's sepia. It's even older than the black and white one. I'm watching sepia. But I remember when BBC Two came in, I was at school, and for BBC Two, you had to have a different aerial.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Really? Wow.
It's done in lines, but the lines across the lines that scan the image or something. And the channels, it was BBC and ITV then, they had 405 lines, but BBC Two, because it was high definition, had 625, and so they had to have a special aerial. And I remember every day coming home from school for weeks and weeks to kind of look up at the roof and see the aerial, because they were going around fitting these aerials. And I remember being so excited when I came around the corner and I saw the BBC Two aerial on our roof and knew that we would be able to get an extra channel on the telly.
Get the old grey whistle test on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got, yes, this is an interesting comment. We can maybe start with this. I don't know. Except I've just done something to my screen. I can't see it now. Oh, here we go. Bugs is saying that vegans kill a lot of bugs as the soil is poisonous due to farmers having to do it, which presumably means putting the poison into the soil.
Well, I think what we've got to remember, right, is that in fact, if the concern is about kind of crops being grown, well, first of all, yeah, I mean, the soil has become degraded through the sort of methods used to kind of, artificial fertilizers and stuff like that. The soil has become degraded, and and what I would advocate is veganic agriculture. People can look that up in the dictionary. There's an organisation here in the UK called the Vegan Organic Network, and that's all about farming without exploiting animals and with kind of properly sustaining the soil, so you don't get that, you don't get those problems. But when it comes to the growing of crops, where the soil is worked to grow crops, in fact, non-vegans are far more responsible for that than vegans, because of the huge amount of crops that have to be grown to feed to farmed animals. So it's not being so. If anyone who's concerned about the soil, the most important thing you can do is to go vegan and switch to vegan diet. That is the number one thing you can do immediately to offer proper, better protection to the soil.
Yeah, I mean, and you can extend on that, going back to the original point of insects or small animals or any others also, because I mean, it's not just in potentially the terms of space and amounts of plants that would need to be grown if everyone was in a vegan diet. It would also be the fact that we're the only ones that are actually exploring alternative options, as you've just talked about the soil. But there's also things like, for example, vertical farming, which could completely eliminate crop deaths and worrying about the soil or the land or any of those things. So it's not even just about the reduction. It's also about exploring new methods going forward because the way that we currently farm hasn't been sustainable for a very long time.
No, if anyone's interested in really exploring this subject, there's a book by George Monbiot, a book called Regenesis by George Monbiot, and that's all about how we should be producing our food to minimise adverse impact on the planet. And that goes through all different methods of crop production for the different types of crops and how we could do it, so much better in each area
Yeah.
to benefit the planet. And he advocates a plant diet because of um, the huge harm that animal farming causes to the planet, and how it drives the climate crisis, for instance, and drives destruction of ecosystems and the natural world.
Yeah, I mean, and then another key point to sort of take into consideration is the vertical farming that I mentioned, and pretty much every one of George's ideas are all based on things that already exist, are already kind of like out there. Imagine if we had another 25 years roll forward where people, science, where technology, where industry, engineers, all of these people were actually looking in this direction. Like, how can we efficiently grow food, but actually take the rights of others into consideration when we do that? Like, imagine if that was the direction for the next 25 years, what we could achieve as well. We could have methods of farming that we don't even know that exist at the moment. They haven't been invented because no one's ever tried.
Yeah, it would make a massive difference in the same sense as that most of the knowledge we've had about other animals is how to exploit them. But as soon as you start looking elsewhere, then you open up vast new
Yeah,
kind of
exactly that.
fields
Yeah.
of knowledge and stuff.
And we've
We've
never
got
we've never done that. Certainly not as a civilized situation where we've got the technology, we've got the means, we've got the backing to actually change things. No, we've never had that before. So imagine if we did. Imagine if that's just, and I'm just talking about 25 years. If we were putting it in comparison, we'd be talking hundreds of years, but just 25 years of looking at it that way, what we could achieve.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, we got a question here. We got a point here from Eris of Pain, replying to Jennifer. I eat meat. I love it. I respect the animals, although they're a sacrifice. So there is a sacrifice, I suppose it means. Anybody want to?
as somebody who, before I became vegetarian and then vegan, was probably the biggest and most horrific meat eater in the world, I think I can probably reply to this. Before I reached the age of 19, I was a huge consumer of meat, to such an extent I did such things as I used to eat bacon rind. I used to suck the inside out of raw sausages. Right, I used to suck the marrow out of bones. This was me. Right.
Wait a
Um,
minute, to go back, you said so what? You'd just be left with like a sausage skin, like a
yes.
condom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I used to do, and even the most
That's
harmless.
where he got the idea of balaclavas from, and
Yeah. Yeah. And then I pulled it
You
over
should
my
have
head.
used them instead of gloves. That'd have
I
saved your
pulled. I
fingerprints.
used to pull the skin over my head and go and rob a bank. But but no. But you see, and then what happened? I met this guy. I was vegetarian, and I was curious. It was actually the guy eventually became my sister's first husband, and I said, curious, why are you vegetarian? What's all that about? And he said, well, look, he'd been a vegetarian since he'd been a young, a fairly young lad. And he said, what it is, we don't need to kill and eat animals to survive. We can survive perfectly healthy without doing that. And he was very healthy. He actually represented the county at athletics, and it got me thinking. And I thought, well, you know, how can I justify? Because at the end of the day, it's only a taste. It's only a taste. We don't need it to survive. We can live perfectly healthy without meat. In fact, there are lots of studies that say we can actually live healthier without it, right? Um, and so it's unnecessary for our well-being, right? So basically, what we're doing is all these animals are being slaughtered, and or all the suffering often goes with that as well, right? Just for a taste. Now, is that justifiable? And I couldn't justify that, even though I love the taste of meat. I couldn't justify that because
Yeah,
I like.
but that was then, and this is now, in a way, isn't it, Ronnie? In the sense that, I mean, this statement is, I eat meat, I love it. But the point is, we now have all the vegan meats and the plant-based
Yeah,
meats and stuff,
then in
which
those
you
days,
didn't have in those days, right?
no, in those days, right? There were there were really no, you know,
Excuse me.
products that attempted to be the vegan equivalent of meat. You know, there's nothing like that.
Well,
Nothing like.
the thing is as well, and I'm sure that you know before these products, you can testament to this as well. You don't even enjoy the taste of. I mean, in your case, listening to some of your things, maybe you did, but for most people, they don't actually enjoy the taste of meat. They enjoy the taste of the seasonings or the spices or the
Yeah.
marinade or the sauce. If you
Yeah,
just
when people say meat, they mean the flavor and the texture,
yeah,
don't they?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Which 99% of the time are plant-based. So the
Well,
thing that you actually enjoy the taste of course, it can be replicated because
like
it's
a
already made
burger.
from plants.
Like loads of people now, when they think of meat, they're probably thinking of a burger because that tends to be like the kind of diet. Now this afternoon we had a barbecue today in our garden, and it was like, you know, what it was like a fundraiser. It was a fundraiser for the Hunt Sabs, so that it was for the campaign they've got to disrupt the stag hunts, you know, down in Devon. And a friend of ours is doing some fundraising. We thought we'll support her and we'll do a fundraiser. So we had a few people round, make a donation, and we'll do some, you know, we'll do some burgers, we'll do some hot dogs and stuff like that. Now, those burgers, those hot dogs were vegan, right? But I bet that a non-vegan coming along and eating those would have, if we hadn't said anything, they'd have thought that they were actually that there's actually meat in them.
Yeah.
Because the thing about hot dogs and burgers, what is the thing that gives the flavour to the hot dog and the burger? It's the mustard, and it's the American mustard. It's the onions, right? It's the tomato ketchup. That's what makes those things like what they are when you have that, right? And so they wouldn't. And I would guarantee that had someone walked in our garden, it was me, and we said, "Oh, would you like a burger? Would you had like a hot dog?" They'd have had one, and they would if we hadn't
Yeah,
told
okay, but I've got a question following
them.
on from that for both of you, which is that when you suggest, "Oh, I'm going to McDonald's, well, go and get a McPlant." Oh, I'm not gonna touch that, you know, swear word, and it's because it's almost like, I mean, we
It's the
do know
word, yeah. It's
sociologically,
the
right?
word that's put them off, though, isn't it? It's like if you blindfolded them and walked them in and said, "Yeah, here's a Big Mac, eat it," and you actually
Yeah,
gave them the McPlant, all of that kind of like confirmation bias is gone.
Yes, yeah, because people make up their mind not to like it. That's the
Yeah.
trouble,
Yeah.
and don't eat it in the same way that
well,
they eat.
we do know sociologically that one of the
Yeah,
most the things that people are most conservative about are food. And
yeah,
so this is the problem. So in some senses, the Mac plant have not been around long enough yet for it to really
no, yeah,
have an impact. And I suppose from you know, a vegan point of view, I suppose what you need is for Matt Shite to be doing it long enough for it to become kind of accepted. Whereas if
yeah.
they pull it because of the low sales, we're not going to get anywhere, right? So that's a bit
Well,
of a
I
problem.
mean, I think what you probably see is that they'll gradually probably add to their vegan or plant-based range, whatever they want to call it. But going back to, you see, what happens, you know, the psychological is when someone, if I say, well, here's a burger, look, it's vegan or it's plant-based, whatever, you know, it's not meat. If a meat eater eats that, they're going to be eating it with the intention, really,
Of
of
not liking it, yeah.
no, not necessarily not liking it, but with the intention to try and find a difference in it to the meat one. And I think you get that with cheese. You know, people say, "Oh, I've tried all these sorts of cheese. None of it's like the, you know, vegan cheese. None of it's like the dairy cheese." And I think a lot of the reason for that is when they're eating the vegan cheese, they're deliberately in their head trying to find a difference. And I think sometimes they imagine a difference because they're so much trying to find one. Do you see what I'm trying to say with that? You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely. I will say, like in regards to cheese, especially, then obviously, if you've never tried a plant-based cheese before, then the first time trying it, for the most part, is going to be pretty different, regardless of whether you got, even if you had your mind wiped before you tasted it, just because there is a difference. But I think it's testament now to some of how good some of the ones that are, that people can say, for example, just to carry on using McDonald's, try the McPlant as a one-off, and the cheese isn't like, ugh.
No,
It's just part and parcel, and I think that's pretty big, because it takes most people about 28 days to get over a certain taste and to try something new properly and actually allow it to sort of like, to appreciate what it tastes like.
I think actually, Andy, the research suggests, which is bad for us in a way, but the research suggests that it's more like 3 months than 28
Well,
days.
exactly my point. So if you can literally go from just being a normal non-vegan every single day of your life and then go and try something that I like, the McPlant, for example, and go, oh, that's not bad actually, that really shows just how far we've come.
But the other thing is to not try and compare it. Is to think of it in its own right.
Yeah, it's a state of mind, isn't it?
Think of it in its own right. Think of it. I'm not going to compare this to to dairy cheese. I'm going to taste this in its own right.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, on that point as well, like going back to say you were having a barbecue, the thing about like a plant-based diet as well is it's not just that you'd kind of have the like for like, say, meat replacement burgers that would kind of be very similar in terms of taste and texture and even like the way they look. But you've also got so many different other options. Like there's the veggie burgers that are just made of vegetables. You've got mushroom ones. Like there's so many other variations now where you wouldn't need to make. I mean, obviously, if you go for like, you're going to make that comparison. But if you went for one of the mushroom burgers, for example, you're not going to expect that to taste.
No, and I actually prefer some of those to the actual
same. Yeah. I mean, the mushroom sausages, for example, are brilliant. I always pick them. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually prefer those things. But I mean, the thing is because I come from a time, when I first went vegan, and the other thing, going back to the
Middle Ages.
Yeah. But going back to the point I made about
like Catweasel.
Yeah.
I mean, it is something that often gets accused of us, isn't it? That I don't want to go vegan because I like having all these options. Yeah. Well, in reality, actually, it's the other way around. All these options become available to you when you go plant-based in that sense. Yeah. I mean, think of milk, just milk alone. You've gone from having one option, really. Okay, yeah, there's a couple of different colour lids, but one option to dozens.
Yeah, you've got all the different plant milks, but I think also the other thing about what I find with going vegan, it made me think about food differently. Like if I went vegan, I just kind of took food for granted. I would just eat whatever's there, you see. But when you go, when I went vegan, it started. I thought about food more, and in actual fact, because of that, my diet actually became more varied, and I ate a lot more foreign cuisines, obviously vegan, but because of that,
messed up foreign food.
Yeah, but you see, foreign food. See, the thing is, in a lot of ways, it's actually easier with dishes from from other countries. It's actually easier to kind of for those dishes to be suitable for vegans in a sense, because
absolutely.
One of the problems we've got over here with our food, like traditional English diet or whatever, it's lumps of things. You've got a lump of potatoes, you've got a lump of
meat and 2 veg.
Lump of meat, right? Okay, so the meat is like separated out. Whereas if you look at Chinese food, if you look at Indian food, if you look at Italian food, like a lot of these other cuisines, it's all mixed together. So the most important thing about those dishes are the spices and the herbs that are put in those dishes to create the flavour. So it's much easier.
But that's what I was saying, Ronnie, in the sense that it took a long time, many years, in things like Indian restaurants and Chinese restaurants, for the English to accept that kind of cuisine. Yeah. It wasn't meat and 2 veg, which is why even Indian and Chinese restaurants back in the day used to have British menu, right? And so they used to serve fish and chips and
they did. But well, at home, you know,
Omelette and chips, scampi and chips. They still do those at most Indian
yeah,
takeaways. They don't have a menu anymore, but they'll have like an English section. Yep, still do it.
yeah, they do have an English section, but
That's a bit shocking that they still have to do it in the 21st century.
Yeah, absolutely,
yeah,
they
yeah.
do. They do.
But well, growing up at home, we never had any foreign food at home because my dad said, "I'm not having foreign food. Don't want none of that foreign stuff." It's like that, you see. So we never had growing up. We never had anything apart from traditional, British cuisine, and it's because I wanted to try foreign food.
Yeah,
That I,
Typical
traditional
British
British
yeah,
racism.
cuisine, which for a
yeah,
lot of people on a Sunday is like imported New Zealand lamb,
yeah. It's not
slopes
from
that were grown in
not
France.
really from.
Like yeah, traditional British cuisine.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but like the kind of laid out. You got the lump of this, lump of that, lump of the other. Now, so that's why I learned to cook, because I wanted to try foreign food. I wanted to try curries. I wanted to try chop suey, chow mein. I wanted to try pasta. Pasta
See,
dishes.
it even sounds strange to call it foreign food now, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, because it's not, because it's become so. Things completely changed now, but and so I used to get that and cook it, you know, and my parents would be curious, what you're doing there, and I go, I'm doing I'm doing a curry. Do you want some? Oh no, we don't want none of that. You have that, or you don't want it. It was like that. But that was the only way I was going to be able to eat it, and that's how I learned to cook, because I wanted to try. I wanted to experience, food from other countries.
It's quite a shocking story, really. Hey,
Yeah.
going back to what you were saying about, if people know in advance that it's vegan, then they're going to be prejudiced against it. It works the other way around as well. I mean, I've told you that story, haven't I, about the cake? An old partner of mine, birthday. So I arranged for a vegan cake to arrive at this philosophy event, right? And so they took it into the thing, and all the chefs and all that cut it all up, and they all came out with a trolley and made a big fuss. Everybody sings happy birthday. There's this Christian guy who was very kind of anti-vegan and everything, and he starts tucking into this cake and thought it was absolutely wonderful. Then he noticed that I was eating it, and he goes, "Oh, does that mean this is vegan?" And I said, "Yeah." And so this cake that he was enjoying, he just slowly put it down on his plate and never touched it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like as if it's poison. I don't know what's the matter with people, because all those people eat vegetables anyway.
Yeah.
Aside from their lump of meat that they eat, what else are they eating on their plate? They're eating potatoes, they're eating vegetables. So it's like, but suddenly when it's in something like the cake, it becomes poison. Yeah, it's kind of stuff they'll eat anyway.
Yeah. But
What would you say to
it is just,
Harriet of
it's a
Payne
mental
folks?
thing. It's just confirmation bias and prejudice,
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, Andy. Eris of Payne is saying, I personally find the vegan cheese dry. So would you suggest that's just a question of trying the different brands of it and stuff, do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, Violife, they've got Greek cheese now, haven't they? They've
Yeah.
got spreads.
I can't say I've ever known anyone make that particular complaint about it. Sometimes they don't like the taste or the I've never heard anyone say dry. So
there's a vast variety of textures amongst the vegan cheese. There's loads and loads of varieties.
Well, they're saying they're autistic, so I guess that would make them a bit more sensitive, I think.
yeah, I'm trying to in that particular base. The Cathedral City one is definitely not dry.
But I think the bottom line is, okay, so it might be a bit dry, but the thing to remember is this, right? That at least you're not being responsible or playing a part in, the killing of cows and their calves when you eat vegan cheese. If you're eating dairy cheese, right? The dairy industry, in the UK, the dairy industry kills, I think it's something like 150,000 cows a year. Might even be more than that, but at least that. And they're killed at 6 years old, when when cows can live up to 20 years if they're not slaughtered, right? And with the calves, the male calves, because in order to give milk, it's the same as a woman. A woman's pregnant as a baby, and that's when she produces milk. A human. Exactly the same with dairy cows. They have to be pregnant, and they have to have a calf in order to produce milk. And because humans want to take that milk, I would say steal that milk from the cow, then they don't want they don't want the calf around, because the calf's going to drink that milk. So the calf gets removed from the mother. If that calf is a male calf, then that calf is seen as of no use by the dairy industry, because that calf isn't going to be able to produce milk. That calf isn't going to be able to go into the dairy herd. So around about 60,000 calves every year, male calves every year, get slaughtered by the dairy industry at 1 or 2 days old. They're taken away from their mother and they're killed, because because keeping them alive any longer than that, there'd be no point, because that would cost more and it would hit the profits of the of the dairy farm.
You know what though, Ronnie? Every time, say Jennifer does a live, you get farmers on the live denying that, right? And now, do you think it's because they're in a particular type of farm, or do you think it's the fact that they just don't want this information to be out there or something?
I think it's a question of both. Now,
I was just going to say, I bet it's a combination of both.
Yeah, because it used to be high. It used to be 95,000 male calves, and there was kind of, because this was kind of giving the dairy industry a bad name. I mean, I don't know how they could have a bad enough name in terms of like the 150,000 cows that are killed every year, but nevertheless, like killing the 95,000 calves that are a day or two old was giving them a bad name. So what they said was, well, right, we won't kill them at a day old. What we'll do is rear them on a bit, and then they'll be killed for veal at a few months old. So they're still killed. It's just that they're not killed at a day or two old. They're allowed to live for about 3 months and then they're killed. So it's like, there's not a huge amount of difference there, is there? And so that's what happened. They're still killed. They're still killed. Those calves are still killed because, they're no use for supplying milk. So they don't want them hanging around all the time feeding them, and they're not going to be able to make any money out of them. So they're going to be killed, because that's the only way. Yeah, if they're allowed to, if they're reared for a few months and then killed, yeah, they make a bit of money out of them, obviously for the meat, for the veal. But they're still killed, and that's the reality of the dairy industry. And a lot of people don't know that, because it's not, obviously cheese is not a bit of meat on the plate. It's not part of an animal. But nevertheless, the demand for cheese creates that situation. It's because people eat cheese, it's because people drink dairy milk, that these animals are killed. And so the way to stop it, and the way to not play a part in it, is to not consume those products and to consume vegan products instead.
It certainly is. Yeah, now, there's a comment here that's going to get us on to the subject that we were going to focus on a little bit earlier, but it doesn't matter. But it's kind of, there's a comment saying, love all the people coming here to argue for animal use and abuse. And so we were thinking before, weren't we, Andy, about the fact that when you do a kind of live, you get a lot of pushback in a kind of certain kind of way, including all those comments about, if you don't eat flesh, I'll eat double, and this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then you get a lot of people just, articulating themselves very violently. I got some screenshots saying, kind of, I love violence and this kind of stuff, and I will kill it and this kind of stuff and all that. So the question that we wanted to raise was that, in terms of getting a vegan future, is it possible, in terms of the violence that humanity seems to be almost like integral to humanity? It's almost like, will there ever be a world that the vegan social movement founders envisaged, which was a kind of non-violent humanity in the future? Can you even think that that's possible?
Yeah, have to. Otherwise, there's no point doing what I'm doing. But in seriousness, most people aren't violent, are they? I know that obviously there's a huge amount of people on TikTok and on other social media that say these comments exactly like you're talking about. Like, it's very easy to go and find examples of them. But when you look at the demographic, a lot of those people, a lot of them are either their age is young or their IQ is very low, and that's sort of a lot of them. A lot of them are just repressed people that have probably got a shit home life or a shit work life that use an app like TikTok to essentially troll to relieve some of their frustrations and all that sort of stuff. So I have to believe that. I mean, we can look at things like look at the two dogs that were recently shot in London. The vast majority of people are fuming about this. So I have to believe that the vast majority of people naturally are not violent and are actually anti-violence. The problem is a lot of the violence that they contribute to and perpetuate, they're ignorant about, or they pretend doesn't exist, or they've been lied to about how it gets there. But a lot of people, obviously, they're driving their cars or any of these things, they will literally move out of the way of a cat or a dog or a squirrel even. They don't want to commit these atrocities that they potentially brag about on TikTok. It's all just kind of like a persona and an act for a lot of them. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some violent, aggressive people out there, but I genuinely believe that they're the minority, the very, very, select minority at that.
Well, yeah, I don't think that people that come on TikTok saying all those things are representative. In actual real life, they probably, I don't know what the vegan equivalent of this is, but in real life, they probably wouldn't say boo to a goose. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, I think for a lot of those people, they act the way they do on these apps because they could never act like that in real life.
No, they couldn't.
It's almost like an extension of a video game for them, isn't it? I can be whoever I want on TikTok and there's no responsibility.
You see, they'll come on here, we'll be on here talking, and they'll come on here and say all sorts of stuff, right? Yet when I do, when I do vegan outreach, say my local vegan group, when we're doing a stall promoting veganism in the street, or where we're doing a similar stall at a community event that's open to all members of the public, we don't get people coming up to the stall saying, I'm going to kill double the amount of animals because you've got a stall here and I'm killing. We never get any of that. In fact, really all we get is people that are interested. People that are interested say, well, I'm interested in this. I know this is what we've got to do.
It's like a self-selecting audience, though, isn't it, Ronnie?
Well, yeah, but the thing is, what I'm saying is, those people will deliberately come to our conversation here, right? And they'll say all sorts of violent things, right? But in the kind of what you might call the real world, in the outside world, where we have a presence in the outside world, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. So I think if any of these people, if I was doing a stall and any of these people come past, they wouldn't come up to the stall and say the same thing to me on the stall that they're saying on here. You see, because it's easy to be brave when you're hiding behind a screen. You see, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That is it. I think. Because I'm still quite confident, going back to our petition or our clipboard chat from the other day, that if I walked up and down the road asking every individual whether they were against animal abuse, no one would say yes. Sorry, no one would say no. Everyone confronted with that face to face, even farmers are going to say, no, I'm not for that. I don't support that.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything from a vegan point of view, though, does it, Andy?
No, but what I'm saying is those would potentially be the same people that would come on here and say, I'm going to do twice as much of this, because it's not that confrontation anymore.
Okay, well, look, let me push back of what you both said. First of all, it's been estimated that if you took something like 12 days of arms sales globally, you could feed every single person, and you could probably put everybody into full-time education, because it's so the arms trade is so massive, which obviously is based on violence. And then if you think about food security, you've got something like 16 to 21,000 children who will die this day, from lack of nutrition. And it's not that the food is not available, it's that we won't give it to them. Well, that's pretty violent, isn't it, structurally?
Yeah.
It is. But you see, the thing is, if you look at how people operate in society, that there's all this interaction of people in society all the time. But when you look at kind of how many interactions all the time there are between humans in different ways, there's actually very, very little violence, and there's a hell of a lot of cooperation at that level, at that kind of what you might call a kind of grassroots level. And so when there's an incident of violence, it's something really unusual, and it's kind of something really shocking because it's out of the norm. Because most of the time, people pretty much get along, right? At that level, at that grassroots level, where you get the problem is like on a kind of
Well,
on the
look at the
level of
United States, though, Ronnie. Come on, I mean, like, there's like a mass shooting every week or something there, isn't there?
yeah, but a mass shooting every week. But like, but how many people are involved in those mass shootings, and how many people are killed, compared with like all the people in the United States that are getting on, that aren't doing any shooting, you know?
Yeah,
But those,
and I mean, that are against one of the mass shootings too, that
yeah,
literally come together afterwards to yeah.
these things grab the headlines. Well, most of the time, people are getting on. What the problem is when it gets like kind of one removed from that. You know, the problem, like with the arms trade, is like a problem in the sense that exists at kind of government level and at corporate level, right? And I think what it is I think ordinary people are easily led and they're easily misled. And I think what has happened is they've become, misled by governments, misled by powerful people who want to mislead ordinary people for their own ends. If you see what I mean, that's the problem. That's the problem. In other words, people, and even at the level of say people buying into, um, buying into animal farming and the horrors of animal farming, and indeed the horrors that exist in the fishing industry. With how fish are slaughtered and everything, that they're encouraged to do that. There's adverts on the telly encouraging them to do that. You know, and none of those adverts are going to talk about what really happens in these industries. You see, so people are easily led. People are easily kind of. If you
Yeah,
look at
and I mean, what's the main component that perpetuates those feelings? It's fear. If you make people scared, they want to arm themselves. If governments feel under threat, they
yeah,
extra security. So like, I mean, to take how much money we spend on weapons. Yeah, but those aren't for the most part. That percentage that's being brought by individuals, say drug dealers and that kind of thing, is absolutely minimal. That's being brought by countries to
it's
arm
been
themselves versus
it's been
potential other countries. So like a lot of it is in very, very small amount of hands. But the one thing that, like, just touching on the America subject, what I've never really understand about that is, like, I don't disagree with rights, obviously, and the right to bear arms. However, the Constitution is there, essentially. The reason that people are allowed to bear arms is to protect themselves from tyranny. It's to protect themselves. If the government turn corrupt and start using, say, the police as a weapon or the army as a weapon, that they've got a means of defense. Now, what I want to know is, how fucking bad has America got to get in terms of corruption and tyranny before they actually exercise that right to take back their country rather than killing one another, rather than murdering innocent people? When are you actually going to ever use that right as it was intended to actually stand up against the atrocities that go on? Because all you're doing is adding to them.
Yeah, well, the thing is, though, I mean, like, and you said this, Ronnie, in the past, is the fact that in Britain, and we know in the, North America, I mean, people are electing violent people into office.
And then
yeah,
moaning about the fact that they're violent or
yeah,
corrupt.
but because I think those people are cons. Because I think those people are those because I think people are easily misled. You see, I think this is the problem. People are easily misled. You look at and most people actually act against their own interests. If you look at, say, you look at the number of people that have health problems, they have problems with overweight and other health problems because they're consuming like too much fat, too much sugar, and too much of all these things that are unhealthy for them, right? So they're doing something that's contrary to their own interest. Loads of people are. It's a massive problem. It's an epidemic, right? That is, right? They're doing something contrary to their own interest. Why are they doing something contrary to their own interest? Because they've been encouraged to do so by advertising and promotion into eat this, get this. And so people are misled into doing that. They're misled into doing something that is actually contrary to their own fundamental interests. And I think it's the same with who people vote for, right? You've got like we've got a Conservative government here that only represents the interests of a really small minority of the population, right? What their policies are harmful to the vast majority of people, and yet they got elected, and that's because they were able to con people into voting for them, and that's the problem. It's that people are easily misled, and people are easily misled into doing things that are actually against their own interests.
I find it quite disturbing to think that people are misled by the likes of Donald Trump. I mean, like, what else does this guy have to do and say before there's not a single North American who says, "I'll never give this guy a vote if you paid me"?
Well,
Yes,
it's got to that stage, hasn't it, where kind of very similar, I suppose, but without the same tenacity in this country, where you've got people that absolutely know that the Conservatives are rotten to the core, but because of something that affected them, or they were kind of biased to think about Labour from however long ago, they're in a conundrum. Because it doesn't matter how bad the Tories get, they still won't vote for Labour, for example. They'd still rather try and justify. And I suppose it's the same with the Trump thing. People are so sort of, I don't know, stuck in their belief that the opposite is worse, that it doesn't matter what Trump does. He's kind of just got that get out of jail free card.
Yeah, but there's a further problem. There's a further problem within the Republican Party. You've got, Trump having this power base. Well, it shouldn't even exist within the Republican Party. If they actually lived up to the values that they espoused, they would never have even considered Trump as a presidential candidate, and yet it looks like they're doing it again, regardless of the fact that this guy's going through all kinds of court cases, and the fact that we know, loads and loads of women have charged him with sexual assault. And we know what he says about grab a pussy and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's almost like unbelievable that anybody, except in a violent society, could become president like Trump has done. I mean, if we had a decent society, Trump would not stand a chance of getting in, right?
No. But you see, I think the violence of society is something that kind of, in a sense, comes down from governments, because I think, if you've got governments that that are kind of violent in their attitude, that are uncaring. I mean, you take the present government in here in the UK. What have they done? They've cut people's benefits. They've cut social care. It's estimated that over 100,000 people with disabilities have died because of this government's policies, because they're cuts in social care and they're cuts in benefits to those vulnerable people, right? So and that obviously that's violence. That is violence against the most vulnerable, and where you've got this uncaring attitude and this ethos that we've had with government after government in this country for decades and decades, that what you do is you don't care about other people. Get what you can for yourself. Get what you can for yourself. Get what you can for your own family. Just compete against other people to get what you can for yourself, right? And instead of saying, well,
which is a form of violence, yeah.
And that's violence. That's right, because
and that's what I'm saying, though. But so many people buy into it, right?
Yeah,
the majority.
Because I think
but it also shows you. I mean, it also shows you that, like Ronnie said, people are so easily led. So you have to change what information they're fed, and their actions will change to suit. I mean, literally, it's kind of the same as like going back to the First World War, for example, and stuff like that. It's not like everyone in Germany was violent, but they were misled and brainwashed into thinking that they needed to do these things. And it's very easy once you've got people on side in that way.
It's certainly easy, but you see, if it's easy for them, if it's easy for people to be kind of persuaded to accept a really harmful idea, or a really harmful set of ideas that are harmful not just to other people but harmful to those people themselves who accept those ideas, right? Which is in most cases, which is mostly the case, right? Then I would think it would be also easy to get people to accept other ideas that are of benefit to them and also of benefit to others. You see,
Yeah, and obviously there's you got to
yeah,
take into consideration a lot of the positive promises that have been made for the last couple of centuries have never been fulfilled for the most part. These
no,
people have just been let down and shit on and squeezed even further, no matter who they voted for or no matter what they believed in. And so it almost that becomes a thing as well. Like it's almost like
yeah,
there's lots of people now that are just completely apathetic about politics in general,
exactly.
but by not voting, they're still consenting to whoever gets in because they're not opposing it in any way.
Well, whoever you don't vote for, the government always gets in, because there's other people will vote, and I think that's the thing, and
Yeah, well, whoever you vote for, a politician gets in.
yeah, a politician gets in, but I think it depends on the nature of the politician, and I think the thing is that if you if people can easily be led if people can easily be led in the wrong direction, they can easily be led in I hesitate to say the right direction because I don't mean the politically right direction. I mean in a much better direction, shall we say? That's probably a better way of putting it. And we can be the people to to lead people in that better way. If we had more, if we're able to encourage more people to become vegan, then what will happen is we'll get more vegan politicians. We'll have more vegans to vote for politicians, and so, you know, we can create an administration in this country that's truly ethical, and will look to move society in an ethical, caring direction, both in terms of humans caring for one another and also humans treating other animals with respect. You see, and I
Well,
think it can be done. I think
it's
that's
got to
what
be,
we.
it's got to be global. It's a little bit like when the farmers say that they've got the best welfare in the world. We know globally that can't even be true if they wanted it to be true.
No,
The point
I,
is to have one particular country standing outside of the rest of the violent kind of world and saying we're ethical. That would be, I mean, like look at Cuba, right? So
well, I think the thing is, but I think it's a question of the practicalities of how you do it, because we kind of, exist in a world where we've got all these separate nation states, which is like just crazy. And what we've got to remember is all these separate nation states only exist because of violence, because people violently carving out pieces of land for themselves in the
yeah.
past. You see, that's why we've got nation states, when really we should just have one world, one people. You still have to have administrative areas to organise things in particular areas, but those wouldn't be nation states. And that's the way it should be. Nation states are a complete anachronism, really. There's no logical or ethical reason. In fact, they exist because of unethical reasons, right? But we have to accept the situation as it is. We've got all these nation states, and I think what happens if we were to create a truly ethical government in this country, what it does is it sets the example for other countries, and so people in other countries that are struggling to do the same thing will get inspired by that, and people will look to this country and say, look what they've done, look what they've done in the UK.
Ronnie, I so wish that I could buy into what you're saying, but I mean, look at Corbyn, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Which was going that way, and the entire
yeah.
establishment, including the establishment of the Labour Party.
Yeah,
But
this is
yeah,
this is where I struggle with it all. Like
yeah,
I absolutely firmly believe that if we manage to get a vegan party, or even better, a vegan prime minister in this country, that lots of other changes are possible. But
yeah.
getting from now to there is what seems like the impossible task. Because even someone that was just a vegetarian that actually just gave a little bit of a shit was so badly demonized and slagged off to the point where people still, all these years later, will go, yeah, but Corbyn, though, as though like that means something. How on
Yeah.
earth would we ever get a vegan prime minister?
Can I talk about
Yeah, go for it.
Corbyn? And you see, what happened was Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn was elected to be the leader of the Labour Party by the membership of the Labour Party. And what happened was they didn't really want Jeremy Corbyn originally Jeremy Corbyn wasn't going to stand in the leadership election, and he was kind of persuaded to put his name forward. And they kind of allowed him to stand by thinking, oh yeah, look, there's this really left-wing guy, we'll allow him to stand just to show that we're not biased. But no one in what you might call the Parliamentary Labour Party, and by the Parliamentary Labour Party, I mean the Labour members of Parliament, not the membership. Nobody amongst them thought that he had any chance at all. And that's in a sense why they didn't make any fuss over him standing. We let him stand, he's a far lefty, no one's going to support him. But what happened was, him standing with his radical, progressive, humane, decent policies, right? That really inspired loads of people. At last, there's a chance of getting a leader of the Labour Party who's kind of half decent or three quarters decent, or like for the first time. And so what happened was loads of really well-meaning people joined the Labour Party, right? Because he was a candidate, and because the leader of the Labour Party was elected by the membership, he was elected as leader by the membership. But most of the Labour MPs were against him because he was basically he was a left-wing leader of a right-wing party, and so what happened was all the right-wing, basically all the right-wing members of Parliament conspired against him, and that's what made it so hard for him. It wasn't the membership. The membership of the majority of the membership of the Labour Party wanted Jeremy Corbyn as leader. It was the members of the Labour members of Parliament in general.
Yeah, but Ronnie, that supports Andy's point. I mean,
no.
It does, because
I can half understand what you're saying. So basically, if we could rewind a few years and we could put Corbyn to stand in front of, say, the Green Party and back them.
No, but I want a kind of.
He's a moderate, though, isn't he? He's a vegetarian, not a vegan.
Yeah,
I mean,
but having said that, right? I've only said that as a preamble to what I'm now going to say. Basically, I was setting the stage. So basically, the problem for Jeremy Corbyn was the other Labour MPs, right? And where do members of Parliament come from? They come from the constituencies, and the constituencies lie in local areas, right? Yeah. So this idea that power resides in Westminster is a fiction, really. Power comes from all the local areas because that's where all the members of Parliament come from and go. Everyone goes to London to protest, and a protest outside Parliament. But to me, that's kind of wrong place, because that isn't really where power comes from. It comes from all the constituencies, and all the MPs come from different constituencies. They actually congregate in London to sit there, but they're elected by people in local areas, right? So if we can massively increase vegan education, which means a hell of a lot more vegans need to be involved in it, and of course we've got to kind of solve that problem, right? If we can do that, right, and if we can change in the different constituencies the mindset of ordinary people in the different constituencies, so you can get enough vegan people in these different constituencies to elect a vegan member of Parliament, right? Then you would be able to have a radical vegan leader of that party, because the other members of Parliament in that party would also be radical vegans. So they wouldn't. So the leader would not face the same problem that Jeremy Corbyn faced. And that's the way to do it. You've got to think local. You've got to think about this on a local.
Okay. I can buy all that. Let's take all that on board, and let's pick a town and say that constituency now, for the most part, are vegan. They've got a vegan representative. It's all going well. How do we fix the media? How do we fix the
can you imagine the Daily Mail headline?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Unless we kind of have already changed culture somehow.
I think you fix the media really the same way that with the same process by which we're going to elect these vegan representatives. In other words, it's a question of that they've got the money, we've got the numbers, or we've potentially got the numbers. A lot of the media is controlled by moguls, by tycoons that want to keep the status quo because the status quo benefits them, because that's what's enabled them to be rich you see, and wealthy and powerful. So they don't want that changed. So they will pump out propaganda through their newspapers. The Daily Mail is probably the worst example, but a lot of the other ones as well. Propaganda to try and keep the system as it is because it benefits them. It, to the detriment of loads of other people, benefits them. And so they'll con people through their propaganda to support the existing system, right? Because it benefits the media moguls, right? So they've got, so that's propaganda that's going out all the time from those newspapers, right? But you see, if we've got the numbers, then we can combat that propaganda with our own information, because we'll have so many more people to distribute and decimate. Is that a word?
Yeah.
To give it, to spread out, to spread around.
Disseminate, you mean?
Disseminate.
Disseminate, that's it. Yeah, not decimate. Decimate is destroy.
Yeah.
Well, it still works, I suppose. But yeah, that would be the potential concern. I mean, because you made a good point earlier about some of these other countries and some of the things they do. Yeah, but half of the time they're so poorly represented by the time that they get to British TVs or British internet screens, for example, that people just think, oh, look at what these idiots are doing in this country. They don't think, we could do that.
The thing is, you see, so we've got the numbers. So in terms of numbers, we've got the numbers to spread our own information, to combat the information that's coming from the media that they're able to put out because of their money. You see, that's why I say they've got the money, we've got the numbers, or we've got the potential numbers. If we could encourage more vegans to become active in vegan education, and that's, and that is the kind of $1 million, £1 billion question, isn't it? You see.
Yeah, but I mean, Ronnie, if every single vegan became an activist now, is that enough?
Well, because what would happen is those vegans would create more vegans, and then if they became activists, but there'd be a huge number, wouldn't there? You see, and so eventually the amount of information we could put out could would sufficiently counteract. Because what you got to remember as well is it's not a question of changing everyone, right? It's not a question of turning everyone vegan, right? Because if you look, our present government in the UK was elected by only 29% of people eligible to vote, right? Of everyone that could vote, and I mean, obviously, a lot of those people didn't vote, but of everyone that could vote, right, it was only 29% that elected this government, right? So that's all we'd need. We wouldn't need 100% of the population to be vegan. We'd only need round about that 29%, and the present Conservative government was elected by really that 29% of people elected this government by a substantial majority. They didn't just scrape in this present government; they were elected by a substantial majority by just 29% of people eligible to vote. So that's all we need. That's all we need in order to get an actual vegan government. Yeah, there might be other members of parliament that weren't vegan, but we'd be in charge, right? And then we could pass the laws and everything, give proper protection to animals.
I love your optimism, Ronnie. But we've got a question which is going to destroy all of that, which is from Eris of Pain. Why is almond milk so expensive? She wants to know.
Well, the thing is, what I'd say about almond milk is almond milk. out of all the plant milks, almond milk is the one to avoid, right? Because if you look at the ecological footprint of all the plant milks, all of them are lower than cow's milk. All of them are lower than dairy milk. Dairy milk causes far more harm. Apart from the harm dairy milk causes to the cows and calves, it actually causes far more harm to the environment. The production of dairy milk causes far more harm to the environment, to the natural world, to the planet, than any of the plant milks. But out of the plant milks, the one with what you might call the highest carbon footprint is almond milk.
Yeah, and the great news about that is it's not popular within the vegan movement.
No, that's what I was about to say. I mean, I don't know where the commenter is, but potentially the reason that that's the most expensive is because it's the least popular.
Well, it's very popular in the health You know,
Yeah,
the health kind of food market. That's where it's popular.
the other
Because I
thing
have
is,
noticed it's very often not the only one that's not on offer in the supermarkets also, and I would guess that's probably the same reason.
the other thing with almond milk is I think a lot of the almonds are grown in the USA, and what happens is they, in order to kind of pollinate like the almond trees, bees, huge numbers of bees gets transported all around this big area of the USA, and that causes a large numbers of a load of those bees perish in the process, right? And we need to take that into consideration, especially there's been some um, recent research. There's been some research published where scientists have claimed that bees are sentient. In other words, that bees are aware, they feel pain, etc., etc., which some people previously might have doubted. I mean, I've always wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. You see, so there's that on top of that. That if you want to avoid this, or this process that causes, all this large number of bees to perish, then avoid almond milk, because probably, I mean, certainly I'd say, certainly, here in the UK, and probably the same, you know, in in many countries in the world, I would say that the most ethical milk is oat milk.
Yeah.
I'd say oat milk, and also I think because oat milk
Well,
is kind
that's the most popular within the vegan community
of
now, isn't it?
because oat milk's fairly bland. Because I think our almond milk has got quite a strong taste. You
Mm.
see, and like a kind of in my tea, I always go for oat milk. And the reason I always go for oat milk is soya milk can be can be the same, but they tend to do more things with soy milk. Oat milk just tends to be oat milk, right? But with soy milk, sometimes they kind of put vanilla in it as a flavour in. You know,
Have you ever made oat milk, Ronnie?
um, well, I kind of make well. We've got a friend who makes her own oat milk, and we kind of made it with her one time, and it was like really easy. I was really surprised how quick and easy it was to make it, and she just makes her own, you
Oh, come
know.
on,
It
spill
is
the
very
beans. How do
easy.
you do it?
I mean, basically, from what I remember, because this was like, well, this is a few years ago. It was basically like just a certain number, a certain amount of oats, and a certain amount of water, and you kind of and you kind of you squeeze it in another container through a kind of like a cloth, muslin cloth or something, and basically, I think that's about all it was. It was like really simple the way she did it.
And can you do anything with the stuff that ends up in the cloth? I mean, what can that be used for?
Well, I mean, I suppose if it's got a compost bin, you compost it. But I think probably you.
Make an
I think
oat cake, couldn't you? You can make oat cake with that.
I think probably you could still eat that. You could
Yeah, so I
probably
mean, you
still
can
do
make it into an
something
oat
with
cake,
it.
couldn't
You
you?
could, yeah. So you
Bake
can,
it, yeah.
Yeah, you
yeah,
just
you
reuse the oats at the end.
right, yeah. So you can still use it. You see, so you can make you can make your own. But you see, of course, it's kind of oats are grown in this country, so it's not like that something's like has to be shipped from halfway around the world or anything like that. And that tends to be the other plant milk I tried, and it's quite rare, but I found it to be similar that you could. I ate it in my tea and it was fine. Was pea milk made out of pea
Yeah,
Yeah.
peanuts, right. Yeah.
peas, not peas. Just in case anyone's worried there.
Cat pee. Um,
Yeah.
I wonder how many people. I wonder how many people have tried pea milk. It's the same as with that other one, potato milk.
I've got yeah, I've tried both. I've used pea milk quite a few times, and I've used potato milk a couple of times because I made the mistake the first time that I saw it in farm foods, and it was like
But it just
18p.
sounds weird, doesn't it,
I bought
Andy?
5. Not trying it, just taking a whim. So I've only got one left. I don't use it. I mean, I don't drink tea and coffee, so I can't imagine it would taste very nice in tea and coffee.
So
But
what?
my son doesn't mind it in his cereal, and I've used it in porridge, and I use it quite often for cooking.
Somebody
So
says that they love rice milk.
rice milk's
A
nice.
bad
Yeah.
kitten said, "I love rice milk for a treat," but I always found rice milk very kind of watery. I
It's
thought.
very thin, yeah. You have to put about half a can of it in your tea to make it any kind of colour rice milk. It might be nice for other things. I think on cereals, and I think in coffee, you see, I think you can put because coffee's got a stronger flavour, right? I think you can put lots of different plant milks in coffee, and that it would still be okay because coffee's got a strong flavour. But because tea's got a much more delicate flavour, you can't put a milk in tea that's got a very strong flavour because then it ruins the flavour.
Not Yorkshire tea, lad. What's the matter with you?
We get Clipper tea because it's fair trade and organic. That's the tea we get, Clipper organic fair trade. We try to be as ethical as possible with tea. I mean, probably, and also the other thing about tea, which a lot of people probably don't realise, is that a lot of the tea bags, in many brands of tea, actually contain plastic because so that they don't rip apart and stuff like that. And you kind of can't if you put them in the compost. I mean, I remember we where we lived previously, we lived there for 10 years, and we had a compost bin, and as from when we first lived there, we were composting stuff. And so when we moved, we thought, right, okay, we had this, I think we had 2 or 3 compost bins, and we thought, okay, well, we'll take the compost with us because we didn't really trust the people moving in they didn't seem the sort of people that would do anything with the compost, So we thought, right, we'll take it with us, you see. So, putting this compost in a like a sack or something, take it, and there were whole tea bags in there that we'd thrown in there like years ago, and there were still whole tea bags. And the reason for that was because there was plastic in the, in the kind of in the bag. They didn't they didn't rot down. You see, so so basically we were having to tear them open and tip the tea out. You see,
my interest has been piqued here, people. Kerry has said I passed my speech. It was about veganism.
Yeah, she had to. She was supposed to email me that speech. I haven't had it, Kerry.
Hey, well done.
I would like to read it, especially even more so. Well done though for passing.
Yeah.
So what do you mean passing? You mean like a college thing or something?
It's for school, I think. Yeah, she had to do. If I remember it rightly, she had to do.
Kerry's 15 now, right?
A sheep farmer's, a sheep farmer's perspective versus a vegan.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But you see, just going back to tea bags, I just finished on tea bags. But the Clipper organic Clipper tea bags don't have any plastic in, so
you can't get Ronnie off tea.
You can't get. Oh no, you can't. Which reminds me, I could do with a cup of tea now. I've gone quite a few hours now without a cup of tea. I'll start having withdrawal symptoms.
It's a national tragedy, Ronnie.
You have to get yourself a sponsorship.
Yeah. But anyway,
ring 999.
Yeah, and tell them, can you send an ambulance with a cup of tea, please? I need it intravenously now. I've gone so long without it.
Yeah. Well, the weird thing is, right, is that people do ring 999 for those ludicrous things, don't they? Like,
oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, my pizza hasn't arrived and this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, that's it. My toilet's blocked. Can you come and send a paramedic?
I can remember one, although it's not funny because obviously it's a waste of their time, but I can remember one of the worst ones I heard was some guy rang up when David Moyes was first appointed as Man United manager and said it was a travesty, but rang 999 to do so.
Can we arrest David Moyes?
Yeah. Hey, Andy, you said that you were cleaning Jasper Cart's windows, right? And do you remember he used to do this entire sketch, didn't he, with these kind of real insurance quotes? Do you remember those? They were amazing.
Yeah. He's actually, I mean, not that it's probably surprising, but he's actually an arsehole in real life. Not sociable at all. You'd think someone who's a comedian, no, not at all. Really unsociable, not, even if he did manage to say you get hello out of him. And the worst thing was, a lot of his acts were based on his mother-in-law. Absolutely lovely lady in comparison. So much nicer than he was.
The thing is, I think I think probably like a lot of comedians are like that because it's an act. They're just an
Yeah.
actor, but they're playing the part of a comedian.
Yeah.
So the real persona isn't necessarily the same as that. They're not a
Yeah, but
natural.
they also do that. That you know the vegan comedian Ranganathan
Yeah,
he kind of basically says on stage that he hates his children, all this kind of stuff. And lots of comedians say that their wives are ugly and fat and all this kind of stuff, right? But it's just like for comedic effect, really.
Whoa, sorry to interrupt you, but I just saw Kerry's comment. I used the phrase exploitation and oppression of fundamental right. Are you serious? You get veganism better than half of the movies.
absolutely
Yeah.
brilliant. Well done. That's true. But you see, I think
I like to think that you've picked up quite a bit from our lives then, Kerry. That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
Kerry for vegan PM, I say.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's amazing that you understand that.
yeah, that's absolutely. The other thing about sheep farming, it's horrendously damaging to the environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's kind of at least two big reasons for that. First of all, the amount of land that it takes up, right? Um, if we didn't have sheep farming, if that would all go back to forest, and that would really help to combat the climate crisis by drawing carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, right? So stuff like sheep farming, because the vast amount of land it uses is contributing like really in a major way towards the climate crisis, and also the ecological crisis, because if there was forest there, like loads of animals could inhabit that forest, and and we would have more wildlife because they'd have more habitat. So that the other thing that sheep farming hugely contributes to is flooding. Where you've got sheep farming on the uplands, right? Because what happens? It rains. There's no
Yeah.
trees there to hold the water,
That's
and it
it. So, yes, about to say the soil
rush.
erosion problem is massive as well. When you take the forestry out, when you take the trees
Yeah,
out, there is nothing
yeah,
to retain that water. It's not just the fact that the branches block it coming down. Obviously, the roots absorb it all too.
yeah. And you see, and so that sheep farming actually causes a net loss to food production because the small amount of kind of nutrition that comes from these sheep that are really all spaced out on these vast
There's
areas.
a couple of great examples just in
Yeah,
Wales alone, isn't there, where you can
yeah.
look at some of the valleys and it's like one side's been farmed and the other side is still wild, and the
Yeah,
difference between them is night and day.
I've got some friends in Wales. We've got some friends in Wales that live. I mean, it's kind of beautiful where they live, right? And they live in this valley surrounded by. I think they've got like three great big hills, you know, towering over them, right? Two of those hills,
Like
right?
Snowdon or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're quite as high as Snowdon, but they are big. They're big. They're like big
A
hills.
big
Is
hill.
there two together?
Big,
Because that
big
might be
hills.
Cader Bronwyn and
Yeah,
Cader Berwyn.
yeah. But anyway,
My hill's bigger than your hill.
yeah, my house big.
Those are two I definitely know are kind of like.
We won't get into that. But anyway, what it is, it's really interesting because two of those hills are completely bare. There's just rock and grass. The one in the middle is completely forested, and the reason is because the one in the middle is an RSPCA bird sanctuary, right? And so there's no sheep farming because sheep are allowed to graze the other two hills. They're completely denuded of all trees. But if they were left, they would go back to the same as the bird sanctuary one, covered in trees and covered in forest. You see, and that's a prime example of the damage that sheep do to like the natural environment. And what happens is because of the flooding that's kind of caused, it's accentuated by sheep farming because there's no trees to hold the water. There's actually a net loss to agriculture because those floods cause so much damage to agricultural land lower down the river
Yeah.
that it negates the food that the amount of food that's lost through that is far more than what's produced by the sheep.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
it
and I
causes
mean, soil erosion by itself is a huge issue. If you
yeah,
if
yeah,
you
yeah,
look at a great example of soil erosion is somewhere like Easter Island. So when they were building all those Moai statues, which most of which are full bodies, by the way, the fact you can only see their heads is the fact that the now soil erosion is absolutely rampant there. But it's because they cut down every single tree on the island.
yeah, yeah.
So there's nothing to protect the soil. Every time it hammers down with rain, it's batters, and that's literally the number one cause of soil erosion. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
so many factors that affect. But the other thing that doesn't very often get talked about is as well, although it's not a great argument for the whole they're herbivores, but they a lot of sheep feed on nesting birds' eggs as well, and completely destroy the nests of ground birds. Like I mean,
Yeah,
it's quite a
yeah.
big issue.
I think they do it for calcium,
Yeah.
and they'll also eat the birds as well for the
Yeah,
calcium.
yeah, the little birds quite often,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
absolutely destroy
yeah,
the nests. Yeah,
yeah. But you see, sheep. The other thing about sheep is sheep are kind of really animals that are like kind of live on rugged side of mountain, dry, you know, arid type. They kind of come from the Near East, really,
yeah,
and they're kind of very similar to like goats in kind of their behaviour. They kind of dwell in that kind of habitat, and so what happens is where over here, everyone looks in the field and think, oh, the natural rural idyllic scene of sheep in the fields, how wonderful. It's actually a completely unnatural environment for sheep, right? Because although, you know, sheep have been here for hundreds of years, in evolutionary terms, that's really, really short. And so what happens, because these are animals that have evolved to live, you know, in dry, fairly arid places, right? They suffer when they're on like lush pasture. They suffer tremendously from foot rot
yeah,
and those diseases, because they've not evolved to be in that habitat. They've not evolved to be in that habitat. And I remember, you know, you know, following on from that, I remember once we were on holiday in Wales, and we'd hired a cottage, and the first night there, there was tremendous rain during the night. All night we could kind of hear it on the roof and everything. And then the next day we you know, we went out with the two friends we were on holiday with. We had to drive, you know, a bit of a distance. It was, you know, probably about 20 miles. To It was like a bird, a kind of bird sanctuary type place we were visiting. And as we were driving along, there were dead sheep. There were, you know, there were lots of dead sheep all in the fields, and it's because they couldn't cope with the rain. They couldn't cope with, you know, with the heavy rain. They're just not suited to be in that in those conditions. And there's loads of them, because also there no shelters provided for the sheep by the sheep farmers. Don't find them any shelter. There's nowhere they can go to escape like a heavy downpour like that. And there's loads of them dead. You know, and this is something that people don't realise. They look in the field, they go, "Isn't it wonderful?" You know, because people go, "If yeah, well, if we were all vegan, we couldn't see the sheep in the field. We shouldn't be seeing the sheep in the field anyway, because they shouldn't be in the field, because they're not from here. They're from somewhere completely different." Do you know what I mean? You know, it's this really kind of narrow thinking, and it's also about I want to see that, I want to see that, I want that. But you know, what about the animals? Not you, your selfish needs. What about the animals that are like suffering and dying because of that?
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, I don't see pandas often enough. Can we not factory farm them?
Yeah, we could have yeah, grow a load of bamboo and have a load of pandas like in the.
But yeah, that's the mentality that we're talking about. We
Well,
want to make sure that we keep it as unnatural as possible, so that at odd time when we're driving down the motorway, we can see one with spray paint and a tag.
well, yeah. You see, I don't wear. You know, these bamboos. I'm really worried about wearing. You know, you get these bamboo socks and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I really worry about bamboo socks in case a rogue panda comes along. Do you know what I mean? And has me feet.
Well, you should be on alert. Do they not come with a warning on the label?
Especially, I never wear bamboo underpants for the same
Yeah,
reason.
that's probably a good
Don't
rule.
worry, Ronnie. Don't worry, Ronnie. The police don't drive pandas anymore.
Yeah, it should be a bit like there's probably a load of people on here don't remember about panda cars, police cars. But I remember. Do you know? I remember when police cars were black. That's how old I am. And instead of the siren, they had a bell. I remember when I don't know how old I was, 8 or 9 years old. I remember waiting at a bus stop.
Actually, that's a really good point. Actually,
Yeah.
when I've watched films and stuff, the police cars are black.
Yeah, I remember waiting at a bus stop, and this bloke come flying down the road and swerved round the corner and went down this other road, and then coming after him was this black police car. A complete black police car with going ding 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 ding.
So did the traditional sort of like London black taxi, did that replace the police?
No, I think that no, they were always around. It was just
Right.
the police cars were always black, but then they realised, well, hang on, if we have them like what is it? It's like with the stripes and all that on them, and the flashing blue light instead of the bell, then people are going to see them more easily. You see, they become more recognisable. So that's how because I think ambulances used to be like a bland plain colour as well at the same time. Now of course they're quite similar. They're similar regalia to police cars now, aren't they? So people can see them.
Yeah.
But in those days, no, they were black.
Yeah, it's just kind of like the mortuary car now that's black, isn't it? Like if there's they had to come and pick bodies up or whatever, they're traditionally still black. Same as like a hearse is traditionally still black. But yeah, that's true.
You mean hearse? You mean?
No, the one. I mean, it would be a hearse. Is it a hearse still if it's not the funeral? Like say there was a school shooting, and they take the bodies to the morgue. That's normally black as well. I don't want to refer to it as quite often they do as a meat wagon.
Yeah, right. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. I mean, I've got some friends who are funeral directors, and their van is like they're big. They got like a big van, big transit van type thing, and that's like a silvery colour.
Right.
But I know when they do funerals, the hearses that they use are black. But what that van's used for, I'm kind of not really sure. But then that wouldn't be the van that went to pick up people from a shooting, would it? Because they wouldn't send them out. It'd be something to do with the police, wouldn't it? So
yeah, it's not forensics, is it? But I can't think what the person's called. It's the coroner, isn't it?
The coroner is the person that decides on a cause of death. If there's any kind of if it's not like a natural death, then the coroner has to hold a hearing to determine like the cause of death and stuff like that. Investigation type thing. That's where the coroner comes. It's almost like a kind of court type thing with the coroner.
And then you have the undertaker, which has got probably the best job description in the world, isn't it? Really
takes people under, undertaker. But they like to call themselves funeral directors now, don't they, rather than undertakers?
Oh, do they? Yeah. You haven't seen what Colleen said? My dad had a used police car, and everyone slowed down around.
I think that's quite funny even now, though. Like when you're on the motorway and all of a sudden everyone around you starts slowing because there's some highway maintenance thing that's just joined.
I know that's hilarious. But my dad, he lived in, he spent most of his life in Gloucester, right? But when he was young, I think I don't know how old he would have been, like early 20s or something like that. He bought the Lord Mayor of Gloucester bought a new car, and the Lord Mayor's old car was for sale, and it was quite a big bit of a limo thing, but it was quite old. So my dad bought it, right? Because it was old, I don't think it was that expensive. My dad bought it, and when my dad drove around Gloucester, the police used to salute him, and they used to stop the cars to let him through because they thought it was the Lord Mayor.
Ronnie, have you ever seen that one? I don't know whether they still do the fairs. The woman used to be like a fundraiser for one of the animal charities, and she used to drive. It was an old-fashioned ambulance that had been converted, and on the side it said Parrot Medic. I haven't seen it for a while, but it quite often used to be parked at like any sort of fundraiser or something like that. Yeah, and it was an old-fashioned ambulance that they'd done up.
I know a guy. It's in one of our local towns. He makes vegan cakes, and he calls himself the Cake Doctor.
That's good.
You see, so like if you've got a cake that if you've got a cake that's like not looking right, you phone him up, and he comes round and gets all this like equipment out. It's a bit like that cake. It's called the Cake Doctor.
So he comes round and gives you an aspirin and said, if it's no better in the morning,
if it's no better.
But, let me through. I'm a cake doctor. Yeah. but yeah. Now, where did we start off from? We've gone
all over the place.
Perhaps to our original subject, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's good to hear that you're out on the street again, Roger, over there in Dublin.
Yeah, we are. We're out there tomorrow.
Yeah,
so
yes.
We'll probably do another Facebook Live. See if we get accosted by another strange person.
You might be lucky enough to see the same one.
Yeah.
I'd be ecstatic if I saw the same one.
Yeah. Is that with Graham? Is it, Roger? Is it Graham that's doing that with you?
Yeah, Graham. There? Well, Declan as well. So Declan is
I'm pleased to hear that you've got, because it's after there's been a thing like COVID and it stops you doing things like that, it can be kind of difficult to sort of rev yourself back up again, can't, and get back into it, So that's good. That's good to hear that.
Yeah, well, it's great really because Graham has almost like introduced a little bit of enthusiasm back into the entire system, which is great. Well done for that because. Because I was feeling a bit jaded, and it's great to see a kind of a younger generation coming through, really. So that's brilliant.
But I think one thing about I think there's like positives and negatives from the COVID thing. I mean, I think there's kind of a lot of negatives. I think it's kind of got quite a lot of people out of the habit of activism. Unfortunately, this is what we've kind of sort of experienced that locally.
Yeah, it seems to, doesn't it? Yeah. It seems to be kind of like the wind out of their sails kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we had one local group. There was a guy, one of our nearest vegan groups. The guy that ran it was very enthusiastic and also very innovative. I'm going to say this in a bit. He was innovative. Is that the right way to say it? Innovative in like kind of his ideas for different things in the street. So, some very clever ideas to attract people and that, like really, really good. And he had, he was the person, the kind of the main one that ran it, but other people helped him. And then what happened was, when COVID came in, he kind of focused more on his business because he's got building business, focus more on that, right? And now everything's, gone back to like sort of what it was before. He's kind of not gone back to the outreach because he's got sort of so much into the habit of like doing the business. Do you see what I mean? It's like, and I think that's kind of affected a lot of people that way. Because I think, humans are creatures of habit, aren't they? And if they get out of one habit into another, then it's kind of hard to sort of break that again. And I think that's what's happened to like a lot of people. Yeah. And so that's been downside. But I think, the positive side of it is I think people have looked more at social media as a way of spreading the vegan message because they weren't able to do it going out in the streets. So they thought, well, hang on a minute, what about social media? And I think, and they found this kind of extra way of doing it in various ways. I mean, obviously, TikTok is one way that we wouldn't have done before lockdown. We wouldn't have thought of it, and it's now, or a lot of us wouldn't. So there's been that sort of positive side, and now we.
Hey, Ronnie, can you see my screen? It's Mr. Bland.
Oh yeah, that's Mr. Bland. His chin, he's got like a kind of a curved up chin, isn't he, with a beard on it? Mr. Bland.
I think it was a very stylish goatee. I think, Ronnie.
Yeah, goatee. Oh yeah.
No, it's funny because the first time that I ever watched those couple of clips from the Vegan Society that are in what's his name, Simon Amstell's film Carnage, I thought that they were genuine satire. I didn't realise.
Yeah, I know. That's the brilliant thing about Carnage is the fact that you can't tell the real from the fake. Can you?
Yeah. The bloke that killed the vegan and ate him, that's in Carnage. I don't think that's true, is it? He's going through the history of how we became a vegan society.
And those vegans dancing around in the nude, waving their genitals about. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few bits that probably aren't 100% factual.
Talking about that film by the Vegan Society, we showed it. We used to in Worcester once a month in Worcester. When I was more involved, I'm kind of really just involved like a kind of more local level now. But I used to be kind of more involved at like a county level. And what we used to do, we used to hire this hall in Worcester, and we used to put on different like vegan events, like we'd have like a cookery demo or a talk or something like that. And one of them, we decided to show that film, the Vegan Society film from the 1970s. Yeah, and yeah, it was a good attendance though. About 40 or 50 people came along because
thought it was a comedy night, did they?
we put on a bit of food. They thought I was a film night. I'll come along and watch this film. Anyway, the film started. I'm sat at the side because I'm running a stall and it's at the side of the hall, and everyone's kind of in rows watching this film, right? And the film starts, and you can see people's chests moving, like, and they're trying not to laugh, And you could see, how people they're holding their laugh back in their chests and trying not to laugh, and I'm trying not to laugh. And it had to be her. All of a sudden, right, it had to be Louise. All of a sudden, Louise just burst out. It's burst out. Right? And then everyone collapsed because once she went, they all went. And everyone, there was a few people tut-tutting actually that didn't have a sense of humour. But like almost the whole audience just were falling about. And, the majority of these people were vegan, but it was just like, so how it, it was just so funny how these people were speaking, and the professor that came on and said, "I've examined these vegans," and I found
well, the people on my screen now are Jack Sanderson and also Kathleen Janaway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and they everyone
showing off her compost.
And they've got the vegan cheese. Remember? Did you ever make that vegan cheese back in the day, Roger?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, I mean the one that looked like diarrhea. Yeah, I know.
Well, no. Well, what it was, how we used to make the vegan cheese, and this is probably a useful recipe for anyone listening.
It's actually very, very nice. I mean, I know people will make jokes about it. It's actually very nice.
I'm banned from making it. I'm not allowed to.
I know. Yeah.
Basically, what we did was at the time there was this. You couldn't get any soft vegan margarine. In fact, right back in the day when you go back
but Ronnie, can you get the hard stuff now? That's the question.
No. I think if you were going to do it now, you'd have to get something like a vegan.
Because it used to be Tomo, right? But is there anything like Tomo now?
No, there isn't. I think what you.
So you couldn't do it now, though, could you?
Oh no! Wait a minute. No. Wait a minute. I think you could. Now Flora do like a block. They call it.
They do a block. Yeah. It's in my local supermarket.
They do a block.
Yeah.
Now whether that's actually as hard as Tomo.
So you got to melt it and then let it harden again, haven't you?
What you do is you have I don't know exactly what the proportions are, but I think there were recipes available for it. What you did was you got a lump of this, because the Tomo margarine. Right, that was at the time.
The reverence in your voice, Tomo.
Well, it was only margarine, really. Like pretty much that. I mean, people used to make cashew nut butter and stuff like that, didn't they? But
it's from the kosher shops, wasn't it, really?
Yeah. Well, basically, what it is in the Jewish religion, or certainly people that adhere strictly to the Jewish religion, right? They're not allowed to eat meat and dairy at the same meal. I don't know why. I mean, it's just. Don't know why it is, but like they're not, according to the religion or their holy book, right? So basically, say they had a dinner with like a beef dinner, right? Say they wanted to have a beef sandwich, right? The spread, they couldn't have butter. They wouldn't be allowed to have butter, right? They wouldn't be allowed to have butter because you can't mix the dairy with the meat, right? And also, if they had a cheese sandwich, right, they wouldn't be allowed to have a spread like a lot of the margarines in back in the day had animal fat in, right? But like if they had a cheese sandwich, they couldn't have a margarine with animal fat in because once again that's mixing like the meat with the dairy. So the only
Yeah,
margarine,
Ronnie, do you know the religious reason for that?
no, it's something that they've took from one of their religious books.
Mm.
It's like, and I don't know whether all Jewish people follow it, but I think the strict ones do. So what they did was the only safe margarine they could have was a totally vegan margarine, because then you could have a cheese sandwich, you could have a beef sandwich, didn't matter, right? And so basically, a lot of the early products that were vegan were ones that were made for the Jewish communities, like the ice cream. You see, it's like if you had a dinner with meat, we want ice cream afterwards. You couldn't have dairy ice cream, so they made an ice cream suitable for vegans. You see, and that's what we used to eat. It was called Snowcrest. See, and there's a big factory in London used to make it. And anyway, this Tomor margarine, it was hard margarine, right? What we used to do, cut a chunk of it, melt it. You'd stir in some soya flour and a bit of yeast extract, and then you'd let it set, and that was your cheese. Like really simple. That's what we used to have.
It was soya flour and then just flour and then
no, I don't think it was ordinary flour. It was soya flour.
soya flour, right? Okay.
Soya flour and a little bit of yeast extract.
Do you know, funny thing, Ronnie, when you talk to people now about soya flour, they don't know what it is.
You don't. It's not so easy to get now. It used to be really widely available at one time.
Yeah. It's like yellow, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of a yellowy colour, and the cheese was like that kind of same colour, the vegan cheese. And I used to quite like it. If you put a bit of pickle with it and a bit of onion, I thought it was all right. But if
I did. Because you do it kind of thinly, and so you then slice it. And it was all right. I mean, it was the color, which was diarrhea color, but was the problem.
So to get this straight, you get your block of marge, you melt it, you add nooch essentially, and some soy flour, which I'm guessing you could probably replace for corn flour.
Well,
soya flour.
I'm not sure whether it would taste the same if it was corn flour. But you
I
can
don't know, that'd be soya flour. I don't think
soy flour for sale ever. I don't think.
You can get soy flour. I don't know. I think Holland and Barrett might sell soy flour. I think they might. You might be able to get soy flour from Holland and Barrett.
So what element of taste does the soy flour add?
Well, no, I don't know how much you could experiment.
Well, it's just that back in that day, right? Is that soya flour was used as a replacement for egg in baking?
Yeah. What it added was the protein.
Right. Okay. With you.
Cheese has got a certain amount of protein in
it.
And
it was a texture. It was a texture as well, wasn't it? Right.
Yeah.
So it's like a binding thing, right?
But like I say to Louise, I'll make some of that. And she goes, "Oh no, that's."
What did you used to make it in? Did you used to have like a little tray or something?
Just a little pan. A little pan, yeah.
Yeah, you pour it into something, and then you'd have it, and I didn't mind it. I'd have a sandwich, bit of, but like now, I'm not allowed to make it because Louise goes, "Why do you want to make that?" There's all she said that all that is just fat. It's just fat.
Yeah, as though all the other vegan cheeses.
As all the other ones are really fatty.
Like most of it is like most of the vegan cheese is now made from coconut oil, aren't they? Mm-hmm. And all cheese, whether it's dairy cheese, whether it's vegan cheese, whatever.
Right, so it's all junk, isn't it? Have you seen this? It's interesting because Graham is talking to Colleen about this Irish law. Now, I've got to admit, I'm not up to speed on this, but it's called the Dublin Declaration, right? And Colleen is saying, what about the new Irish law that makes it illegal for vegans to criticize religious use of other animals? And
what?
Yeah, no, and so Graham has said,
that's Georgie, by the way, not Graham. I think Graham's still.
Oh, is it? Okay. Hi, Georgie. What? Please do tell. And then Colleen comes back with, some kind of new anti-hate speech legislation called the Dublin Declaration. Now, I think Colleen shared this with me a few days ago, but to be honest, I didn't really look into it that much.
I'm wondering if it specifically says that, or whether people have said that what it says covers that. If you see what I mean, does it specifically say you're not allowed to criticise the use founders, or does it say, is it like in more broad terms, and it can be interpreted as including that? If you see what I mean.
Also, what is the religious use of other animals as well?
Well, I suppose things like ritual slaughter.
Mm.
Also, well, my first question would be like, well, who's deciding who a vegan is? Because it's not something you walk around with a card. So if
Perhaps,
the only way that you can be prosecuted by this is by admitting that you're a vegan,
but
surely in court, and they say, "Are you a vegan?" You say, "No."
And
perhaps,
who would do that, Andy? But I tell you what, it might be funny enough is something more simple than that. Is that there's always been a lot of controversy in Ireland about them using live other animals in the kind of nativity kind of scenes
yeah, yeah, yeah.
around. Yeah, so maybe it's something to do with that.
Well, yeah. The thing is, though, it kind, when you get to ritual slaughter, it's not just vegans that criticise it.
Well,
In
this
fact,
is it. This is it.
it's
Yeah.
actually mainly non-vegans that say, "Oh,
Yeah,
we're all,
there's a hell of a lot more non-vegans that are against these
oh,
things.
oh,
I mean, look at how
yeah,
many times people have
yeah,
gone, "Wow, I'm not against slaughterhouses unless they're halal or kosher."
I know, yeah, yeah."
So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So really, a vegan's likely to criticise. A vegan would criticise all slaughter. They're not going to bother to make a distinction between.
We get that on the street all the time. What do you think about al-hal slaughter? I say, well, it's a rights violation, just like all other types of slaughter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. It's not like, but I do think like it's sort of used in a racist way because racists will kind of use it and they'll go, "Oh, these people they slaughter animals like that."
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
what it
well, yeah,
is.
yeah. So does
yeah,
our
absolutely,
right.
absolutely it is. Yeah, it's buying back into what we talked about earlier. It's that culture. It's kind of like that. These are. I mean, sometimes people say those things to see who's around them, to see if someone else goes, "Yeah, I agree. Halal's the worst," because it's almost like that comfortability factor of, yeah, they're a little bit racist too. I can say a
Yeah.
bit more here. I can be a bit more myself.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I can't. Yeah, I can open up and go full throttle on the racism. But yeah, that's yeah. Then that's kind of how it tends how it kind of tends to be used, and you will get racists. You do get these campaigns, welfarist campaigns, don't you, against ritual slaughter, and you do get racists getting involved in those because it's a way of having a go.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, the damn Japanese who killed dolphins and the yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah,
Japanese,
yeah.
you know,
Well, look at Yulin Festival. Look at the
Yeah,
xenophobia and racism just towards China. When the
yeah, yeah,
vast majority of that, if we're talking about maths, if we're talking about populations, right, the amount of people that are pro eating dogs and cats in China is probably the equivalent of the amount of people in England that are pro surfing at midnight in the dark.
or bad debating or dogfighting. But I mean,
it's
I've got there's a guy called Peter Lee, I think Li, probably Peter Lie, I don't know.
I think it's me.
And
I think you were right the first time. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah, he did a paper in a book that I got a chapter in, and he was saying that most people in China have never eaten dog flesh,
yeah. Um,
including all the kind of provinces in which dog
Yeah, I
flesh.
can't remember. Do you ever remember? It's a good few years ago. I watched it now. I've got a feeling, in fact, it might have been something to do with that Mark Ching, which is why it's no longer available. But once upon a time, there was quite a good film. It's only about 20 minutes long that went round quite a few reputable businesses in various parts of China. And they just enter in, like, basically were just interviewing random people from offices and all that kind of stuff. And a big percentage of those people denied that Yulin Festival still took part. They were adamant that it had been outlawed years ago. Like that's, it's not just that most people are against it. A lot of people are like, can't believe that it happens.
it's like people in this country don't believe that experiments on beagles go on anymore.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah, exactly that.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly the same. People,
Yeah, it's like
don't believe
tourists
that.
tourists used to come up in Ireland, right, and they couldn't believe that there was fur farms in Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just yeah, but so it's universal. But there was a guy, I know this guy. It was a while back, and he was involved in like campaigning on different animal protection issues, and he was going on to me. I hate all these bloody Chinese. They're all cruel bastards. Blah blah blah. And I said, yeah, what about those Chinese people the other day that stopped that truck carrying a load of cats for slaughter, and they rescued the cats? Are they a load of bastards as well? And he said, well, oh, well, no, not them. I said, therefore, your statement that all Chinese people are bastards, that isn't true, is it? And he was kind of mumbling because, of course, it's not. There's loads of decent. There's people that campaign for animal rights in China. There's people that are vegans in China.
Yeah, I mean, one of the points that I like to make is I can guarantee you there are more Chinese people actively doing something to stop Yulin than any English person.
Oh, I'm quite sure. And
So,
that's,
like, this is when you put it into context. It's like, yeah, you're offended on the internet, thousands of miles away. What are you actually doing about it?
yeah,
Because
it's
the
all this,
people you're accusing are
it's all
doing
this,
something.
but like if you kind of, if you kind of compare, um, you know, people always like to say it's these people in other countries that are cruel, don't they? That's the thing.
Yeah.
But like if you compare the amount of like use of other animals, exploitation of other animals that takes place in over here, it's probably per head of population. It's probably far greater than most other countries in the world.
Yeah, absolutely agree. If, for example, England was as big as China and we had 1 billion people that lived here, can you imagine how many animals we would exploit just for food alone?
I think the thing about China though, and the strange thing, there was a guy. I remember a guy. He spent ages doing a survey into how many animals are killed per head of population in all the different countries in the world. And the funny thing was that according to his survey, China came out top. And the reason China came out top wasn't anything to do with dogs and cats, it was to do with fish. It was
Yeah,
because they have a huge amount of aquaculture there and
yeah, yeah.
they breed loads of little fish and eat them. And that was the reason. It was nothing to do with dogs and cats. It was to do with the fish and to do with the aquaculture. I think the second worst was the USA.
Yeah.
But that was why. Nothing to do with dogs and cats, you know. Um, and this is where people kind of like get it so wrong and so willing to kind of, oh, it's those people in another country. It's like the whales. Oh, bloody the Japanese killed whales, but like, well, we killed like, you know, like I just earlier spoke about the number of cows and calves we killed, and that's only a, you
Yeah,
know,
but I mean, even that, even just to take the like for like example, what? So you think that all the fishermen that work around Great Britain have never killed a whale with bycatch or driving into one with their boat? Like,
yeah,
are you
yeah.
fucking joking? Or
No,
poison them with oil leaks or any of the other things? I mean, think of all the electric cables that run under. You don't think that there was some sort of issues when they were doing this, or dropping dynamite, or testing nukes, or any of the fucking
yeah, yeah.
thousands of things that we've done as a country?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of whales are killed in collision with ships. I mean, I think they're working on methods, you know, technology that will kind
Yes,
of
sonar
prevent.
alone is a problem for
Yeah,
them, right? Like it messes with them. So, like, just so many
yeah,
things that we do just on this little island that people
yeah.
want to deny and blame someone else for.
I know, but even like the fishing industry, you know, the what is done to the fish by say by trawling, how the fish die when they're pulled up from the
Yeah,
the deep ocean, burst basically like you know they kind of pretty much explode, you know, because
yeah,
of the change in the pressure and everything like that. It's horrendous, and it's every bit as horrendous as kind of what happens to the whales, and yet it's people quite happily will shove fish down their throat,
yeah.
you know, while criticising the Japanese for killing the whales. No, so it's like don't be hypocritical, you know. Um, all of it's wrong, and you know, don't be part of any of it, really.
That's it. That's exactly it. I mean, at the end of the day, the fact that it happens anywhere at all is the problem.
Yeah,
Not
and I think
arguing about how many or how bad or any of that. Like, that's just a waste of everyone's time at the end of the day.
yeah,
The fact that it
exactly.
happens full stop anywhere
Yeah,
is that's enough.
yeah. You know, just you know, don't be part of it in your own life, and campaign towards other people for them not to be part of it either, and then we can change things round, and show solidarity and support to people in other countries that are doing the same, like the people in China or Japan that are campaigning for veganism. I mean, there's a large number of vegans in China that you know
Yeah, I
that.
mean this is a key point going
Yeah,
back to kind of like full circle on our conversation, because obviously sometimes it can be a bit disparaging to think about how far we've still got to go. However, our greatest challenges are in countries like Britain and in America. A lot of these other countries around the world, if there was a shift towards veganism. They haven't got to change anything anywhere near as much about their lives as everyone else has. They haven't got to have the same cultural shifts that we have because they're nowhere near as bad already, exploitation wise, as what we are. If we can
Yes.
tackle some of these big Western countries, the rest of the world will follow suit much easier anyway.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that there are a lot of countries in the world, particularly in the East, where um, they're much more plant based in terms of their diet than than this country or the UK, for instance, or the USA. Um, but what's happening is the kind of consumption of meat and dairy has been exported to those countries. They're being encouraged,
Yeah,
and because through I think through factory farming, because the price of animal products is coming down, the poor, the poorer people in those countries, which are often, a large percentage of people in those countries, are able to afford it. And because in those countries, like the consumption of meat was always associated with privilege, it was only the rich people that could afford it, right? And the poor people ate mainly a vegan diet. It became associated with privilege. So people think, oh, well, if I'm able to eat meat, it raises my status. I can now afford meat. It raises my status, type of thing. So that's the problem we've got, is it's being exported.
yeah.
And countries that previously, you know, were very much more plant based than we are starting to consume more animal products now because of that. Which means that the vegan movements in those countries are like even more important and
Yeah.
need even more support.
Yeah, and I suppose one thing we will probably see as well going forward, a bit like we have in the past with like the fur farms and stuff like that. If, for example, let's just say from tomorrow there was a UK wide ban on dairy, it wouldn't be the end of the dairy industry. All these companies potentially would just go and set up in France or Belgium or somewhere else, and they just distribute further afield. It wouldn't be the end. They'd just move like they have done.
A lot of them are multinational anyway.
Yeah,
A load of countries are multinational. A load of these dairy companies are like huge international conglomerates, really, and that, so they have an international presence in any case, and they will sell their products like wherever they can. So yes, I mean they, they still have a market, but the thing is that kind of veganism is a worldwide movement. Vegans in all countries, and it's just a case of like vegans everywhere, more vegans everywhere to get involved in education, so that we can kind of, you know, create a worldwide. It's not about changing things in just, in this country. It's like we need a worldwide change, don't we? And
yeah,
people all over the world to be doing it.
yeah, yeah. Right, what time is it? 10 past. I'll probably
Yeah,
go another 5 minutes or so till quarter.
yeah. I've got to go.
One thing I was going to ask Ronnie, when I watched that short film the other day, that's got you and a few others. It was like the pioneers of the liberation movement. When was that filmed?
Oh, that was filmed quite a while before COVID. I think that was filmed in about 2018,
Right,
and it's
because
taken
that was the
age.
first time I'd seen that before.
It's taken out. It's actually filmed in what was one of our vegan cafes,
Yeah, I guessed.
but
Yeah, I could
that
tell.
is
Yeah.
sadly now closed, that place. But that was filmed. Yeah, that was filmed there. You can probably see. Well, my part of it was, that was in.
I thought it was interesting. Like I said, I mean, I enjoyed watching it, and straight away I went looking for the early doors, the Hunt Sab one
Yeah,
that
but
talked about.
there's like just one unfortunate, really unfortunate thing in that film, and it's like one of the guys in the film said that, oh, I fight for animals, but I think, you know, I put humans first.
Yeah,
Did you get? And I thought I thought it was very, very unfortunate that he said that, because it's like not true, either morally or rationally, that humans are more important than certainly than other sentient animals. And I thought it was a real shame he said that. But he's the guy that's really very, very much into just anti-hunt. He's vegan, but his focus is really just on anti-hunt. So he kind of doesn't probably doesn't really totally get the vegan thing, if you see what I
We're,
mean.
we're back to the reasonable vegan there. But Rami, I think you were the only person who didn't call other animals
About
it
to
in the
say,
film.
yeah, the language
Yes,
throughout the
yeah,
film, in fairness,
yeah,
was
yeah.
a
There
bit
was
questionable in a few places.
kind of that were yeah, yeah, that's right. I mean, like
I
a lot of
mean,
those.
and my only other criticism that I would have had of the film was that I just expected a bit more sort of ALF and kind of other talk. I mean, it might as well have been called the Pioneers of the Saboteurs movement
Yeah, it
because
was
it was
very
all Hunt Sab related. I mean, I haven't
like
got a problem with that. It was just,
all those people. All those people really, I think, had their roots in Hunt Sabs.
yeah, yeah,
And I think it was really because the guy from the northeast, Clive Swinscoe, is a very old friend of mine, way back from I think the 70s, really, from the Hunt Sabs. He was the guy that he wasn't the guy that made the film, but he was the guy that kind of helped the filmmakers bring everyone together. And the people in the film were all people that Clive knew, so they tended to be people from back in the day, the Hunt Sabs. Now, like a lot of those people, really in that film, apart from Hunt Sabin, they've not and stuff connected with Anti Hunt haven't really done anything else. The only one that in that film that kind of has done is me.
yeah.
You see, so they were all
Well, to
people
be
that,
perfectly honest, I mean, just from the language alone, you could kind of gather that too.
yeah. I mean, some of them had maybe done some other stuff, but it was mostly they were mostly people who'd been Hunt Sabs back in the day. You see, of course, Chris Williamson, who was on there, he'd been a Labour MP,
Yeah,
and of course he was a big supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, and he's got thrown out of the Labour Party because they did a witch hunt, didn't they? Of accusing people of anti-Semitism to be able to kind of purge them out of the party because they were left wing. And then he fell victim to that, Chris Williamson. So he's like he started off as a councillor, Labour. He was leader of the Labour council in Sheffield, and then he became an MP for one of the constituencies in Sheffield. And it's vegan. I mean, it's been vegan years and years and years, Chris. But basically, his main, activity for other animals was Hunt Sabs. He
yeah.
was Hunt Sab back in the day, and so like that was their main the area where they all came from was Hunt Sabs, and I mean, I started off with Hunt Sabs, but I kind of moved on to other things, whereas a lot of those people hadn't done, and I think that's why it was heavily sort of focused on anti-Hunt stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it, and it was quite inspiring in the sense that it made me think I could make something like this very simply. It wasn't
Yeah,
there wasn't a lot to it really, was there? There was some old clips of some Hunt stuff intertwined between the interviews, which very simply done but effective.
yeah. I mean, yes, I think it was good. I mean, the reason I shared it because I thought it was worth sharing and would be of interest to people, but there wasn't a lot of like kind of really kind of pro-vegan stuff in it or talk about veganism, was there really? I mean, I think I did a bit, but I don't think the others really did very much on that, to be honest. And
No, not really. No, no. There's one particular. I can't think exactly what you say, but there is the one section that I remember thinking when I listened to it. I could clip this. I could take this particular bit and use it. But it was something you were saying about halfway through.
yeah. But you see, but it's almost as if what I find with a lot of people that I used to know in Hunt Saboteurs, it's like they're like old soldiers talking about the siege of Mafeking. I was knee deep in muck and bullets back in the day, and it's a bit like that. That kind of their their sort of glory days, in a sense, are way back in the past, and they like to come.
Kind of before veganism, really, wasn't it?
Well, before it became veganism became an issue that people campaigned on way before that, and so they tend to they're kind of they're sort of fixed in time. They're fixed in time, in a sense, and it's great to talk about the old days, but a lot of them aren't really doing anything now.
Yeah.
certainly not in terms of promoting veganism. They might be doing, kind of bits and pieces, but it's not to do. It's not to do with veganism. It's not to promoting veganism, and they're kind of stuck back in those days, in a sense, in how they are in their heads. And I think there's, there are quite a few other people like that as well, really.
Do you think a lot of them would take the cranky vegan line that veganism isn't really the issue; it's activism?
I mean, possibly so. Possibly so. I think that they're kind of very focused just on one aspect of activism, though, which is like anti-hunt. Like that kind of, that's the kind of main thing that seems to be in their heads, is the anti-hunt stuff. Because that's where they kind of came from originally, but they've kind of stayed there.
How do you think they would react to the thing about, well, we got the legislation, but the legislation isn't worth the paper it's written on because there wasn't any cultural shift beforehand? Do you think they'd go with that or not?
I think they'd agree that the legislation isn't worth the paper it's written on. I mean, the only thing that really came out of the anti-hunt, the only thing that, like, the Hunting Act really changed, that the Hunting Act got rid of, was organised hare coursing. That's the only thing it got rid of.
Yeah.
Because they just wouldn't be able to do a big organised hare course without it being obvious what they were doing, and they wouldn't get away with it.
Well, coursing was never all that appealing to the kind of people that are still going hunting. If the people, the redcoats, wanted to do hare coursing, they'd do it and they'd get away with it.
The thing is that there always was what you call rough coursing anyway. That always existed anyway, alongside the organised coursing. A lot of people involved in the organised coursing did the rough coursing, along with a lot of other.
Yeah, lamping and stuff.
I can't remember who said it, but I can remember someone said once upon a time, referring to the act, that essentially coursing was given and basically given up in exchange to continue fox hunting, which in a lot of ways makes sense.
Well, it's just that they kind of, it's just that it's hard to get away with the coursing.
Yeah,
the organised coursing, a load of people gathering to.
It's a perfect example, isn't it? For some people could refer to that and say, "Well, you can't argue with it because there's no coursing anymore." So it's almost like that welfare compromise that's always offered. I'll just give them that to shut them up, and we'll carry on in our own way.
Well, what's happened is a lot of the coursers, the real kind of die-hard ones that wanted to carry on following the organised coursing, because that involved betting. You see, it involved betting. They would bet on the greyhound which performed the best. So, and there'd be bookies at these organised coursing events and everything. What's happened is a lot of the people that were really into that just go over to Ireland now to take part in the organised coursing over in Ireland. So to what extent it's kind of really made a difference to hares is, quite debatable, really. The main problem is the legislation is weak and it's not enforced, and that so it's problematic in two ways. And I think anti-hunt people do reckon, people that are just focused on anti-hunt kind of do recognise that, and would agree. Whether they really thought about the thing regarding cultural change being vital if we want to really end these things, I kind of don't know, because there was never any focus on that. The two areas of focus was direct action against the hunt, which was hunt sabs, and trying to get legislation passed. There was nothing about educating ordinary people in order to change the culture. That never came into it.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's where we know better now, but at the same time, that's the issue that we face. Without that cultural shift, without those shifts in society, I mean, even if we could click our fingers and get a vegan prime minister tomorrow, they'd get 4 years and then they get voted out, and then people would be going, "We're never doing that ever again." So, like, you have to change society too.
You kind of have to, yeah. I mean, we have to educate people as possible to become vegan. The only people that can do that education is vegans, or are vegans. So therefore, the key is far more vegans becoming involved in education, and there's kind of another level with that as well, because we need far more people to instigate and encourage people to to get involved in outreach as well. Like,
Yeah, the worrying thing though, Ronnie, is that you've got people like Reasonable Vegan who's trying to encourage vegans just like Leonard to get involved with welfare and get involved with reducitarian stuff and kind of like, kind of dilute and kind of,
yes, yeah, and it's
instead of concentrating on what we want to do, they want us to do everybody else's job.
Yeah, and that is a problem because it's kind of diversionary. It's diverting vegans from what they really should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, people go, well, do this vegetarian stuff. Well, the vegetarians can do that. Well, do this reducitarian stuff. Well, the reducitarians, because there's more of them in the first place, right?
Strangely, it's a bit like the trade union thing about you make a wage demand and then that they'll offer an increase in the money, but it won't be as much as you've demanded. It's kind of similar to that. Is that one thing I've noticed is that that campaigning for veganism, right, and not mention reducitarianism at all, and not encouraging people to be reducitarian, still increases the number of reducitarians. Because I've had people come up to me at the store and said, "Oh, since I saw you last time, I've cut out a load of animal products." They've not gone vegan. I say people go vegan. I never say, well, you could try just eating vegan a couple of days. Well, I never say that. But like they formulated that in their own head. Do you see what I mean? So
100%. At the end of the day, it's the same with anything. It's kind of like, if you're going to say to someone, we'll just reduce this a little bit, then they're going to do less than what you've even encouraged. It's the same with like having an abolition position. If you say, well, let's just encourage this little bit of welfare, you're going to get even less welfare than you've asked for. At least if you've got the abolition position from the beginning, you're going to get offered welfare, but you're going to maintain that that's not what we want. This is what we want.
It's the same because you'll only get the top of what you won't get.
It's whatever you're asking for, whether it's a social justice movement or whether it's less prices for train fares or whatever it is that you're campaigning for, you're always going to get offered, especially at first, far less than what you want. Always pick what you want and stick with it. If you decide straight away to offer to say, look, let's make a compromise and we'll take this, they'll shit on you even more than that, and they'll know that they can push you further.
Yeah. The best way to get welfare, not that we want welfare, but the best way to get welfare is to campaign for abolition.
Absolutely, yeah. You'll keep getting offered better. Well, I mean, people say, isn't welfare the best thing, and then we can go for abolition along the way. It works the other way around. If you campaign for abolition the whole way through, the welfare compromises that you get offered will naturally automatically improve too. So we don't need to waste our time on welfare.
No, it's complete. It is a waste. It is a waste of energy, because like if you're saying be reducitarian, you're setting that as a top level.
Yeah, and you're telling people that you don't really care about this issue all that much either. It's not that important. It's only as important as how much you can be bothered to care, which isn't where we stand either. So I totally agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, that's the answer, and it can't be. I mean, I'm saying it all the time. What I've just said about vegans becoming more active and more vegans becoming instigators, but I don't think it's a thing that can be said enough. Because
I totally agree, and so we can end the show on a fairly positive note. To go back to the Graham and Georgie example, I mean, the group that they've set up didn't exist. 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago. They've got a group together. They've put a bit of literature together. They've got some signs. They've got some stuff, and they're out. So it's not just a case of what can be done by going active. It's a sense that straight away now they're organising, and there's other people that feel invigorated, or other people that are now wanting to go out and do stuff again purely because they've decided we're going to do something. Or sometimes it just takes you to be that spark in your area. For you
That's
to
when.
say, I'm going to start doing this, and you watch how many people actually were thinking the same thing, but just needed someone else to do it first.
Oh, whereabouts is this, Andy? Whereabouts is that happening? There at?
That's Roger's neck of the woods. So I'm
Oh,
not sure
oh,
how
oh,
far away they are from each other, but
yes.
it's the
Of
vegan street
course,
that's where they're doing their
of course,
activism.
in Dublin. Yeah, of course. Yeah, yes, of course it is. Yeah, and yes, and I mean, vegans can become active. It's very, there are some very, very simple forms of outreach that people can do. I mean, people want to go over to like Roger's YouTube channel. We did a series of our Still Alive weekly show that we do. We did a whole series where we went through different suggestions for outreach. There was a list published by the Animal Justice Academy of different.
Some of them weirder than
Some of
the
them were very,
others.
some of them were very weird. But in the final one, we've done 6 shows on it. We went through all the 50 suggestions, right, and talking about each one, and then we did another show which comprised 5 shows, and then we did another show at the end where we picked our best 10. And so, if people don't want to watch all through all of them, the final one where we talk about the top 10 is probably the best one to look at, and that gives some really good ideas that people can do for outreach in their local area. And some of them are like really simple, and some of them are what people can do just on their own as
Yeah, I
well.
mean, one of the things I was thinking about the other day is really, really easy activism that actually kind of does need doing if anyone wants to start doing it, is there are so many memes and pictures and things that already are circulating where the picture or the thing is effective, but the language is terrible. If people could start correcting some of these things going forward, so the new versions of them that are being shared are actually using the right language, that makes a massive difference. It's a small amount of work, and the people that are then influenced by this picture, they're getting a message that actually sort of resonates in a proper
Yeah,
way.
that's a great idea, Andy.
Yeah, I think that's good. And people are particularly into that and have got a bit of graphic skill maybe that can do that. That's something that they could do. There's loads of different ways in which people can move things forward. It's just a question of everyone thinking, how can I do a bit more than what I'm doing now? Because if everyone did a bit more, then we'd be kind of flying, wouldn't we?
Absolutely, yeah.
Actually, that's a great idea, because like there's loads and loads of memes that come flying along, and apart from the language, they're really good.
Yeah, I've been basically doing it the last week or so because obviously I've only really been having my phone. So on a lot of the Facebook groups and stuff, I've literally been seeing a meme that's been pictured, and I've been changing certain words and reposting it as the photo comment. Like it's so easy to do. It takes a few minutes, and it's like the people that are now sharing that version, everyone's learning the right thing.
It's a really, really good idea, that.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's our positive note to end the show on.
It is, yes.
And it's something everyone can do. You haven't got to spend any money. You could be at home. It's very, very simple stuff.
Yeah, there's stuff that people can do if they're online, and there's stuff that people can do if they're, going around in the outside world. There's like, I talk about there's kind of these two categories of activism. One is stuff that you can do just in your everyday life as you're going about in the world. Like, for instance, leaving vegan leaflets in public places where you're going to that place anyway, so it's no trouble to have some leaflets with you and leave one, for instance. And then there's other forms of activism where you've got to kind of make a little bit of an extra effort to do it because it's not part of your everyday agenda. So there's those different types, and I think people can do both. And so if you're someone that you're in a situation where like you're kind of you're online, then doing that with the memes, that's like an excellent thing to do, as well as other stuff that you can do online as well to promote veganism.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's not necessarily just with memes. I mean, if you see a video on YouTube that you agree with the fundamental of, but it's just some of the language, again, just literally just share it with a tiny statement at the top that says, this is really great, but I would change this for this. And it's just so effective going forward, and it makes people think. And all we're doing is recycling material that already exists, having which people share naturally anyway. And the message that they're getting going forward is a much better one, a much stronger one.
Mm.
But on that note, I've done 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I desperately need my.
You need your cup of tea now, I'd imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been nice to do a show without a smoke alarm. So well done.
I know. Yeah. I was wondering what else might go off or go wrong, but nothing has, thankfully.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you as always.
Smashing. Well, get well soon, Andy. Hope your ankle.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, and once I'm back on my feet, we'll have to arrange to go for a lunch or something again.
We'll have another meet up. That was good last time.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Smashing. Yeah, shame Roger can't come along as well, but it's a bit...
I know. Yeah, you'll have to pop over for the afternoon.
Yeah. Pop over to
Well, I don't fly anymore, you know.
Well, you could get the ferry.
Get the ferry. Get the boat train.
Yeah, the problem is the ferry is loads more expensive, you know, than the plane.
Yeah, well, I don't know what it was. Last time I went to Ireland, which was like quite a long time ago, it was to get the train and the ferry was 50 quid, but it's probably more than that now.
I think a big part of it also depends on where you go from as well.
Well, this is from like the West Midlands, sort of Birmingham area.
I mean, if I got a ferry over to Holyhead, I've still got to get from Wales through to the Midlands, then, you know.
But yeah, but what happens is...
Oh yeah, but we could pick you up if that was the case.
You buy a combined... What you buy, I don't know if it's the same now, because this is a few years ago, when I went across. You buy a combined ticket called like a C-Rail ticket, and it's a combination of the train fare and the boat, and you save money doing it that way. And so the total amount, you know, for the boat and the train was 50 quid at the time. It's it's bound to be more now. And how that compares with a plane, I don't know.
Well, if you're offering to pick me up at Holyhead, then we might be on, because I'd love to see Bangor University again.
Yeah, for the sake of like a 2.5 hour drive, I will pick you up from Holyhead, no problem.
Well, what we could do is Andy could pick, because if Andy's going to Holyhead, he probably has to come through where, because
I'd have to drive past you basically. I could pick you up on road.
Come and get you from Holyhead.
He'd have to get his leg back first.
Then his leg's all right, and we could do it that way and have a day out. Because I mean, it's a lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's doable.
Actually, that's a lovely. It's a lovely drive through that part of Wales. It's very.
I quite like Wales. You know.
Yeah, very drive. Is that your puss? Is it, Roger? Is that Ruby?
Yes, my puss.
Pussy. I've got a shaved pussy here, actually. No, I mean, I'm not being rude. I've got a cat on my lap who's been shaved because she had a scan. And so
you're not being rude. There's always a first time.
Not being rude. I'm not just a total type of shaved pussy I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think this is deteriorating. Andy. I know.
Yeah. You know that I can't.
Right, I think the
on
cat.
On that note,
yeah, good night, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. See you later, guys.
Bye.